Have
There
that
we
option?
go. Okay. Yeah, it's going now.
So we're good.
It just it said it was recording earlier. Now it wasn't. It like didn't. So okay, cool.
Okay, perfect. All right. So Christy, I'm gonna go ahead and just couple quick announcements for you. I promise I'll take more than 5 minutes to give you time. But hey, everyone, happy Monday. Hope everyone had a nice weekend. Got some time to enjoy some of this weather we're having. Hopefully it stays that way. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen really quick just for the recording. So then just to go over a couple really quick announcements I have for you. Can everyone see my screen? And I will remember to blow up the font size. You guys see that? Give a thumbs up if you see it. Perfect. All right, so just really quick for today. So your instructors for this week, I'm sorry, Christy, I totally misspelled your last name. That's me typing very fast. But Christy Presler will be your instructor today and tomorrow. She'll be handling some visual design, high fidelity mockup, stuff like that. And then Dana will be your instructor Wednesday and Thursday, and she'll be going over some accessibility stuff. Teaching assistants for this week will be Caitlin, as you all know, and Dana as well. Just for the capstone stuff, I just want to kind of reiterate a couple things and also pose a question for you all. So as we kind of mentioned last week here, we're going to start having touch points and demo days for the capstone project. So this Thursday, we're going to have our first one. We obviously didn't expect you to have, much to demo, but we want to hear your ideas, your thoughts and your feedback that you have on those. So for this Thursday, just be ready to share your ideas you have with the class. We'll kind of go around the room, ask everyone to go off mute, and then share what they have thus far. If you haven't already, please make sure you complete that intake data form and then the capstone update. And as a reminder, the intake data form is a one-time submission and the capstone update is a weekly submission. One thing on Thursday that I'll remind everyone on Thursday as well, but when folks are presenting, we're going to have a little peer review. So you can offer thoughts and feedback for all of your students via form submission. It'll be all anonymized, but I think it'll be helpful for if everyone kind of has in writing feedback that they can provide to all of their classmates. So we'll do that on Thursday, just kind of giving the heads up for today. And again, I'll run all this down on Thursday as well. One question I did pose in the Slack channel, I sent out a poll just if folks are comfortable in sharing the intake data, weekly submissions, and or the peer reviews of the rest of the class. So when you have a moment, check the CIC students Slack channel, and if you can just vote in that poll really quick, it'll just help us get a sense of folks' level of comfort. And then if you have thoughts and ideas, please let us know as well. Another couple quick things. Last week in Slack, we were fortunate enough to get the ball rolling for the GitHub Education Developer Pack. So if you haven't redeemed that yet, please do. You get like a lot of redeemable software. And so if you go to that spreadsheet, and in fact, I'll pull it up right now just for the recording as well. If you haven't already, you simply go to this generated URL for your name. Make sure that you're using your correct link, and then you'll be brought to a page where you can redeem the student packs through GitHub Education. So a lot of great software in there. Definitely encourage you to all check it out if you haven't and redeem that. And then two other quick things. One is in terms of we sent an email, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago for the AAI and Wanto forms, which will enable us to have some leadership opportunities for the women as part of our cohorts of Heuristic Code, and then some training vouchers. So if you haven't already, please submit these 2 forms here highlighted. One, the Wanto form is an online form you submit, and the AAI form, you have to fill it out, either print it or scan it or as a fillable PDF. If you can get those over to us by Wednesday, that'd be very much appreciated. And we'll actually have an individual that represents these organizations coming in to talk to you a little bit about these opportunities for these training and or leadership opportunities for the women as part of our first and second cohort. So quick reminder, just please do that. It'll grow a really long way, and we'd love to be able to provide these opportunities to you all. And then last thing, and then I'll give a minute or two for questions, just in terms of resources and content management. So we did decide to kind of centralize on 2 platforms moving forward. So one will be the Google Classroom. So that'll be anything that you have to submit to us, whether it be homework, assignments, projects, quizzes, etc. And then we're going to be using Trello for managing resources and content for the classroom. So we'll put some documentation around how to effectively use those two systems for both our students and instructors, but we're using those moving forward for the rest of the class. And I always forget to ping this along. I'm going to send this document along in the Slack channel, just so everyone has access to the links and everything I'm discussing here. So let me just send this along. I'll send it in both the Slack channel, and I'll send it along in the Zoom chat as well, just so everyone has access to it and they can access all the links there. Okay, I think that's everything I had. Does anyone have any questions for me just related to the announcements? If you have questions on the content, you can hand those over to Christy and the rest of the instructors and TAs on the call. Does anyone have any questions just on announcements or anything I just mentioned today?
Yeah, Jesse, the capstone, I submitted my one-time submission last night, and I'm not sure if it went through or not. I hit the submit button. Did you receive it?
Yeah, so if you see the screen that says thank you for your submission, you're all set. And that goes for everyone as well. So yeah, we did receive yours. Yep.
Okay, because I double checked it, and it was like still saying missing, and I just got kind of second guessing myself.
Yep. No, so that's one thing too, just for everyone. So when you submit like a form in Google Classroom, you also have to go into the actual Google Classroom assignment and then check the mark as turned in. But as long as you submitted the form, that's what we care about. But if you can go back and then select the check as turned in, you'll kind of, double check.
Okay.
But you're all good, Corey. We've got it on.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions, folks, regarding anything I mentioned here, capstone stuff, anything at all? Feel free to go off mute if you have anything. All right, well, if anyone has any other questions, I'll be in Slack. But with that, I'll hand it over to Christy, and I'm gonna drop. So again, I'll be on Slack if anyone has any follow-up questions that you want to ask me. So thanks, everyone. Have a great night. And Christy, I'll hand it over to you.
Sounds good. Thanks. All right. So you guys are almost a full month in. Anyone tired yet? A little bit. This program is a really long slog, but it's also, you're going to learn a ton. This is like, honestly, it's the process of learning to like crawl, walk, run as a developer. And you'll be running by the end. So right now I know that it's like you're at the beginning where you're just like, every step takes a little bit. Okay, so it gets better, I promise. It doesn't probably get less exhausting though. So if you're already feeling tired, make sure that you figure out ways to get some rest. Easier said than done, I know. All right, so let's start with stand-up. Really quickly, anyone have any questions? I know that I haven't been teaching, but I have been watching the live stream and the videos after they got posted. And yeah, I can definitely help you guys with questions, things that you're thinking about. How was your weekend? And you guys can feel free to unmute yourselves when you want to talk.
Hi, this is Brielle. I just thought I'd mention I saw something in the news related to coding about Google just won the big lawsuit against Oracle over whether or not they could use those other snippets of code that they didn't create. And that was billions of dollars worth, they argued, right?
Yeah.
So.
Which is, I mean, that's a really big deal because if you consider that like they were going to have to rewrite the Android operating system, that's a has a lot of ripple effects. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Anybody else hear anything fun?
I heard something on the news sort of in the background, so I didn't get all the details, but it's a program kind of like we're doing to help people that maybe wouldn't end up being able to be coders because of life situations. And it's called Code Path. And I saw it on the Spectrum News channel, and I didn't follow up to get more information, but if anyone's interested, it's they featured a woman. She now has her master's degree and she teaches coding, but back in the day you know, everything because of certain, you know, things that go against us in society. It's like she kept getting, you know, pushed away from her goals and everything. There's this very smart woman, didn't give up. She was in public housing because that's all she could do. And she kept going at it. She got her associate's degree, then her bachelor's, then her master's. And now she heads up this program where it's called Code Path. And I'm not sure if it's local, but I can get more info and throw it in Slack after class if people are interested. But it just caught me. I was like, oh, this is great. This is exactly what we need to do. Because she could have ended up just doing something totally different than she wanted to do. And people kept telling her, you can't do it, and all this stuff. So, did anyone else hear about that? All right, I'll have to get it to you guys.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, like, the advantage of going through a boot camp is that while you guys are drinking out of a fire hose, you're like accelerating the process, right? Like a lot of the stuff that we're teaching you, you can find all of these resources online and you can learn them yourselves, but having somebody pushing you and like working together, you can learn a lot faster because you guys can help each other get unstuck and gather resources. It's the way really good software development teams work too, to help you keep leveling up your skills once you get a job. Because this industry, everything moves all the time, and it's just impossible to keep track of all the stuff all the time. Corey, did you still have a question? Because I see your hand is raised, but no. Yes. All right. So I met a bunch of you at the kickoff meeting, but not all of you. So I'm going to do a quick sort of like, who are you talking to? Kind of a spiel real quick, just to give you a quick intro in terms of what I do. Also, I apologize, Max and I have in common that we both like to talk. So if you guys get really tired of listening to me talk, it's okay. I'm going to try not to spend the entire time talking at you. I will say that today we're actually going to be very code light today and tomorrow, in large part because I'm essentially going to be covering like the fields of visual design and user experience in 2 days. And I decided that trying to code on top of that might just be a little bit much. So there'll be a lot of me talking, but we're also going to have a lot of conversations about what we're looking at and things like that too. So back to me. So I am currently what's called a design technologist. I have been doing software and web design and web development for 8 years now, which is crazy. 8 years ago, basically started looking into web design jobs. I have a background in art and design. I was trying to figure out how to build what I was looking at. Wanted to know like how to design for the web and how to design for software, but like you need to know what you can actually build, because otherwise you're just making pictures and throwing them out into the world. Got into development, basically found a bunch of resources online. Their boot camps didn't actually exist. Most of them started about the same time that I was learning to code. Watched a ton of videos, spent 6 months living in my in-laws basement, like a hermit, doing nothing else except for coding and learning and just sort of drinking out of the fire hose of internet information. And then got my first job as a front-end developer. So we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but especially on the front end of things, the names of jobs in this industry are like very ambiguous. If you're not sure if you're interested in the job, click on the description and then read the description and decide if you might be a good fit, because half the time the people writing the job descriptions don't actually know the proper name of the job that they're listing. And even if they do, they might like spell it wrong or get stuff totally incorrect. So that's a total side note. But anyway, so I started as a front-end developer who actually was doing design stuff as well, which is sometimes the case and sometimes not. It's a very ambiguous thing. We also had like visual designers on our team who did like, actually graphic designers who did graphics and marketing stuff and all that kind of thing. For large software teams, that's pretty typical. It just depends on the company and what things are set up like. So that was where I started. I worked at that job for 2 years, ended up moving to Syracuse, worked at WCNY actually for a year as their website. So I was doing full stack for them, running like everything from the database to like everything you see. Rebuilt their payment gateway while I was there. It was a lot of fun. Very busy, also kind of crazy. Then went and worked actually as a user experience designer at Raymore & Flanagan for 3 years. So there did a ton, like a big deep dive into user experience. The coding there was actually pretty lightweight. And now I actually work for a company called Upstate Interactive, where I'm a design technologist. So I actually get to do both design and development, which this is my favorite job I've had so far because I get to do both. A lot of the tech world is sort of split in this, like you fill out the questions on the form and it's the radio buttons of, are you a designer? Are you a developer? And half the time I click other and I go, I'm both. Because they like to split the world into two, and it doesn't have to be that way. And I'm hoping that you guys come away from today's class and tomorrow's class realizing that design and development have way more in common than they actually do like separate from each other. Because the way that you think about things and the way you approach things are very, very similar. They just have slightly different like byproducts, essentially. So that's the short spiel about me. Any questions? You guys are good? All right. Cool. So I am going to be sharing my slide deck, but it's actually in Google Classroom. So Jesse mentioned that we're putting resources in Trello moving forward. However, we haven't actually fully set up the Trello structure yet. So the resources for today are actually in Google Classroom under Module 3, Visual Design. So there's a document that says resources that should have the slides attached to it. If you guys are having trouble finding it, let me know and I can help pull that up for you. Oh, actually, sorry, it's a visual design slide deck, but same concept. All right. Let me get this moved over, share my screen here. Get you guys off the screen I'm sharing so I can still see you. All right, is everyone able to see a Chrome window that says Visual Design Basics? Yay, okay, cool. Sharing is so funny because sometimes you can see stuff and sometimes you can't. I work on a completely remote team now, so we do this all the time. Despite the fact that I do this day to day, I still manage to goof up screen sharing on a regular basis. It just is, I guess. All right, so Visual Design Basics. We're not covering all of this stuff tonight. For one thing, there's a lot of it, and for another thing, yeah, there's just a lot of it, and I wanted you guys to have a chance to talk and not just listen to me the entire night. But this is, we're covering 1 through 3 is the goal, and then we're actually going to talk about responsive page layout and design system and styling frameworks tomorrow, because they're a big topic all by themselves. And yeah. All right. So we're starting with what is design and who uses it? All right. Anybody, before I actually define this for you guys, no cheating if you already looked at the slide ahead. Anybody have any stabs at what design is?
Pretty much the design of the web page on the front user end, what they actually see, and
Yeah.
the the aesthetics of it?
Yeah, so aesthetics are a big part of, can be a really big part of design. Anybody else have other ideas about pieces? Design pieces? Carolyn, I see that you cheated. That's okay. Anybody ever have any other thoughts about design? Interacted with design in various ways? Yeah, so yeah, user interface, readability, yeah, definitely. Yeah, looking for things where they're, so Ariel's user interface as far as readability and where things are expected. And actually, yeah, that's a really big part of design. So especially when it comes to user interface design, there are a whole set of what people call best practices that honestly, the best way to Google for these things, if you're like, if you have a question about what the best practice is just like button, like what are the best practices for button? Like it just literally is like best practices, like button. Yeah, functionality, absolutely. That's like a really big part of design as well, because it can be really beautiful, but if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter very much. See if I can get this. There we go. I can see a few more of you. Cool. So what is design? So design is defining the look and functionality of a product, software or application. Design more broadly in the world is really look and functionality of just about anything. In software and product like development, we're gonna limit it to software and applications. But design fundamentally is about problem solving. So it often includes visual pieces, but it actually doesn't have to. We're going to talk about something called design thinking here in a sec, that actually covers like the concept of how to approach design. That's not really visual at all. It's really more, it's a little bit like agile software development. It's a way of thinking about how to solve problems and how to break things down. All right, so design thinking. The big fancy like definition is the whole like nonlinear iterative process that teams use to understand users, challenge assumptions, redefine problems, and create innovative solutions to prototype and test things. Essentially, this creates a framework that helps the people actually doing the problem solving step out of their own internal mindset and understand, like, look at the problem from more of like a bird's eye view, understand the larger context of what's going on, and make better solutions because of it, right? So it's easy for me to look at a problem from where I stand, right? Like from my own perspective, but it's harder for me to understand a problem from someone else's perspective, right? My experience of something might be very, very different than your experience of something. And as a result, we experience the same problem differently, but a solution that like effectively solves that problem solves it for all of the people who are experiencing, right? Or at least as many of them as possible. So this is essentially like, it's just kind of a framework for how to approach problem solving. Does that make sense? Yes, no? Also, if you guys are like really tired of hearing me talk and need to like take a deep breath, feel free to like use the little like open mouth icon on the emoji on Zoom. And I'll be quiet for a minute and let y'all think. So the first two phases of this, the main questions to answer are, who are your user and what problems are you solving? So Carolyn wants to hear me sing, which is only because she's never actually heard me sing. So that might be dangerous. But anyways, so who is your user and what are your problems? What problems are you solving? As you guys might guess, these are two really important questions. So think about in terms of your capstone, what problem do you want to tackle, right? Like you can't come up with a solution to something until you actually know what you're trying to solve. The most common how things to do here are user or stakeholder interviews. So how many of you thought that getting into software development meant you wouldn't have to talk to people very much? You can just raise your hand, it's fine. You don't have to. Good, Latonia understood that you would actually be talking to people. That's good. Dana thought you wouldn't have to talk to people. Yeah, so there's kind of a misconception about people who build software that we just spend time with computers all day and never talk to anyone. There are roles like that, I'm not gonna lie. However, most roles like that only get to exist because they have a person who manages them, who talks to all the people for them. So like, honestly, technology is more about people than most people realize, right? It's about how people are interacting with the technology, with the solutions that you're creating, and being able to process both that human side of things and the computer technology side of things and merging them together, in my opinion, is part of what makes a really good developer. So it's the ability to synthesize that technology. Yes, Carolyn, you're correct. So you definitely interface with all the customers and things like that way less than people like in PR or marketing, for example, which is probably a good thing because I'd be the worst PR person ever. However, it's really common at big companies that if you're building, especially if you're building a customer-facing software solution, that you regularly are required to sit with like customer service, like once a year or once a quarter, and listen into the phone calls that they're taking, because often they get bugs reported or like customers are having issues or frustrations with things, and it creates a direct connection from the customer to the people who are actually trying to solve those problems, right? You can only solve problems you're aware of. And it's, every time I've done that, it's super enlightening. You're just like, oh, people are having trouble with that. Like we thought that was working great. And it's like, oh, nope, not at all. And you can get data like from analytics and things to help you figure that stuff out, but it's very different just to talk to people, frankly. So yeah, any of you that are extroverted and like to talk to people, you can bring that into software development and use it to your advantage. I can never pronounce this word correctly. Heuristic evaluations. So this is actually a user experience term. That's a really fancy way of basically saying it's a rubric for figuring out how usable something is. There's 10 rules. We're not going to go over them right now. If you're curious about it, there's a link to an article in the resources. Yes, customer service background is actually super helpful in this as well, because the more people you've interacted with, the more you understand where people are coming from. But yeah, so essentially this is all about evaluating, right? Like understanding your problem, figuring it out from all the different angles before you actually dive into building a solution, because you can spend a ton of time building a solution and build totally the wrong thing. It can be beautiful and it can be elegant for the problem you were trying to solve, but if you're not actually solving the problem that people are experiencing, plenty of dead startups can tell you that it doesn't go well. So this is a really important step that a lot of people skip. Journey mapping is another sort of user experience thing. So this is similar to like flowcharts, things like that. I'm actually gonna pop out of, oh yeah. This is a common user experience phrase is you are not your user. So sometimes you overlap with your user, but most of the time you are not the same person as your user. And it's good to understand who your user actually is. I wanted to show you guys really quickly this free tool called draw.io. It's an open source program, so it doesn't have the most user-friendly interface, but this basically lets you, it's a really easy way to make like flowcharts and diagrams. If you're going to be flowcharting and diagramming for your job, like on a regular basis, get your boss to buy you a better tool. But this is great for like a one-off thing because you can easily basically just like create things. You're like, I want these to connect to each other. You can add labels. You can color code them. There's like a bunch of different things you can do. I actually use this to create a diagram that we're going to look at a little bit later. It's totally free. You can decide where you want to save it, all that kind of fun stuff. Yeah. Hand raised.
Hi, yes.
Yeah.
Is that like competitive to Envision, where we mock up the low in, well, the front end? When I used Envision, a lot of the corners got turned and rounded. Is this comparable to that?
So they're actually different. So Envision is most often used to get design basics into a format that it's easy for developers to interface with. And draw.io is more like, it's really like a flowcharting program. So it lets you could actually wireframe in here if you wanted to. It's not exactly designed for that, but it's just helpful because it lets you, like, you can move stuff around and it'll automatically like keep things connected. It's got a whole different shape panel. It's got a bunch of like predefined things. So if you have a particular type of file you want to start creating, so let's see, like if I do like a new file, I can create like a flowchart diagram. It'll start me out as a flowchart, like that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's they have things in common in that sense, but this is more of like a high level. If you were creating like before you've built anything, like even maybe a wireframe, you're like, all right, I have a home page. The home page connects to my about page, my shopping page, my shopping cart, like that kind of stuff. If you were creating like a flow of like your pages, this could be a really fast way to do it. Honestly, if it's not that complicated and you don't need to show it to anybody, I would probably advocate for just writing it out on a whiteboard. Actually, if I turn off my two desktop things are gonna kill me. All right. Well, anyways, if I turned off my screen share, you guys can see my screen share and my background. I actually have a 6x8 whiteboard behind me that I use to scribble on stuff all the time. Which actually, random, if you're trying to get a whiteboard for a very little amount of money, they actually sell whiteboard boards at like Home Depot and Lowe's for like 15 or 20 bucks. And they'll cut them down to size for you. And the one behind me, that's what it is. It's got tape around it and I hung it with a bunch of command strips. So large whiteboard for like 30 bucks. Useful if you have a wall you can hang it on. But yeah, okay. So any questions so far? I know, Corey, that was a good question about Envision. That's true. I sold Caitlin my old one before we moved from Syracuse. I forgot about that. All right. So step 2 of design thinking is ideate and prototyping. So this is actually a part you guys have already been kind of interacting with a little bit. So once you've actually understood the problem, it's how are we solving the problem? what data do we need, and can we technically build the thing we want to build? This is another important step of the process. So this often includes wireframing. I know you guys have already been talking about wireframing. Part of the reason we wanted you to start with wireframing, it's not just because it helps you kind of understand how to visually lay out like HTML pages, but it's also because like wireframing is a super easy way to just like brainstorm ideas, figure out like, all right, we have this whole list of stuff we want to get on a page. Can we actually put it there? Which can we put it there from a visual standpoint, and actually can we actually then support that with data? So the company I work for now, actually, this is a part where like we might do a lot of the first two steps as a whole team, talking about like, you know, who the users are, all that kind of stuff. This is the part where we start splitting into like the different layers of the technical stack to sort of vet out like, all right, what data do we need on this page, right? So just as an example, so this is actually, I'm gonna show you guys this tool a little bit more in depth, well, maybe later. So you guys have been dealing with Envision, the online version. Envision Studio is actually their desktop application, which is also free. I will say that if you're going to be doing like a lot of user interface design with a lot of high fidelity mockups and stuff, you could use this to get started. But I would suggest upgrading to something like Sketch or Figma, only because this tool is like, it's pretty infant still, and it has some annoying things about it. Like in both Sketch and Figma, you can make shapes automatically snap to whole pixels. This one doesn't do that. It'll just like align stuff to partial pixels, which if you've ever had to rearrange things 100 times over, because basically over here, you can change the X and Y location of stuff when it's like 136.34, and you have to go through and like clean that out for each shape. It's a pain in the butt. But anyways, this probably looks familiar to you guys. So surprise, I did your wireframes. So this is, you can blame me for the good or bad design on the e-commerce website. And I'm in Envision, but I'm in the desktop client. So this is like, it lets you use, like not on the website, you can actually create shapes. You can use it to create like much more intense graphics than you can like in freehand and things like that. It also is really nice because it lets you auto create your grid. So this is, I actually set this up, this grid has settings in here. Also, can you guys see the interface on this? Do you want me to make it bigger? Good? Okay. But so you can actually adjust how many columns you want. So like, not as we discussed, or as you guys just already discussed, like you wouldn't do this, but like if you wanted 10 columns for some reason, you can pick 10 columns and it'll change them for you. Or if you decided you wanted to split your 12 columns and only do like 4, you could do it that way. It gives you options, but the point is like, no matter what screen size you're designing for, you can automatically set up your 12 columns. You can decide how much space you want between them. You can decide how much you want your gutter on the edges to be.
Sorry, question. How did you get your angles so straight in Envision?
So that's actually this program makes it much easier than freehand in that way. So it's actually, these are just shapes. So if I wanted to add a shape, you can go in here, you can click rectangle.
Yeah, when I hit my box in the freestyle, it rounded it out and made it look more less professional. Yeah,
but see, this is actually not the freestyle section. This is actually a separate application. There's a link to it in the resources for the module. This is like a separate application made by Envision. So it makes it really easy to like upload stuff to Envision, you can, there's a
Oh.
little publish to Envision up here that you just say like which project do I want to publish it to, and you can just update it. And if the file, like if you change the file, you can just update it again.
Okay.
And it can be useful for helping you also think about what's reusable, because there's 3 different wireframes, right? So like, and these are the mobile versions as well. But the other advantage of working in here is that like this is actually what's called a symbol. So I can actually take this and I can duplicate it out. And it's actually, let's see if it'll, there's a master copy of it that's just this one piece. This is something that programs that are designed for user interfaces, like for designing user interfaces, are different than like Photoshop or Illustrator for designing, because in Photoshop or Illustrator, I'd have to go through and like build out each one of these, which is fine for an initial design. But if you end up at a point where like somebody takes a look at it and goes, you know, I think the product image should be a little bit smaller, you're like, oh no, I have to go back and I have to edit this 14 times over, right? Or I guess, what do I have, 12 in here? 12 times over. With this, I can actually just create a master copy, edit it once, and it'll auto duplicate. It kind of mimics what you can actually do with standard code, right? So you guys haven't quite gotten to this yet, but when you start learning React, you're going to learn about like template partials, so like pieces of pages. You're going to learn about components basically. So components, like this would be a component on a page. You would build out just this little piece and it'll get dynamically added, which lets you dynamically add like all the different products you might want on a page. But I'll let Joey share more with you guys about that. I just wanted you to know that this exists. If you're looking for another free option and you're super interested in design stuff, Figma is a super popular one. The main thing is that Figma, like specifically for Capstone, Figma does not interface with Envision very well because it actually has its own platform that does the same thing. So just know that both exist. And if you're thinking about like potentially doing some more of this stuff like professionally, I would tell you to lean towards Figma personally. Yeah, and I linked to Figma in the resources. Sorry, I have 2 desktops here and this keeps splitting on me. There we go. All right. Last stage, testing and implementing. The testing part of software development is probably the least favorite of the majority of software developers, like parts of this process. It's super helpful. And it's also the sort of thing that is like very demoralizing is not the right word. Testing the solution that you come up with is always highly enlightening and very humbling. I'll put it that way. Because when you use something with real people, they often make you realize that you solved the problem wrong. Or you didn't understand the problem the way you thought you did. However, the earlier you can get a basic functional prototype in front of a person that's actually going to use it, the better for the whole process. So that's actually one of the really fun things about what I do now is that I actually get to build a lot of our like static prototypes. At Upstate Interactive, our main process is that we go wireframes directly into functional prototyping. And I tend to be the one that does that stuff. So I do the wireframing and then I just build it into a functional prototype. We're going to talk about design systems, which is what allows me to do that tomorrow. But suffice it to say, the faster you can get a functional prototype in front of a person, the better. I do also want to note that depending on the type of work you do, you don't go through all of these steps in like super in depth like this. I just want you to know that they exist. because they're really helpful. All right, so we're about to shift into like talking about visual design stuff more specifically. Any questions about design thinking on the whole? Would a full stack dev go through all of these steps? So yes, not always, but it depends on the team. So a lot of agile teams actually work, I'm forgetting the term for it, but essentially their cross-functional teams is like one of the most effective team methods, where you actually have a designer, like a full stack dev, a project manager, sort of like, and a QA person, or sort of like tends to be the minimum roles, all together on a team, and they actually are like responsible for solving like a whole problem of a particular piece. And so it's actually important to understand how to do this stuff, even if you're not doing the visual piece, because the empathize, define, like ideate and prototype pieces, and as well as testing and implementing, you can end up doing this kind of stuff for database architecture, for API development, for it's a way of, it's a framework for understanding like what needs to happen in a solution, if that makes sense. Yeah, prototyping is huge. And honestly, prototyping can be, even like when you're writing code, writing pseudocode can be a form of prototyping. So like, I don't know, did Max talk to you guys about pseudocode, or have you guys heard the term pseudocode? Okay, so pseudocode is basically where you sit down to like write out a bunch of code. Before you actually try to write anything in code, you essentially start a list of comments that just lists out in English what you want to do. So that once you get into actually writing the code, you don't like forget a step. So if you're like, okay, I know there's 6 steps to this problem and I have to do these 6 things, write them out in English and then write your code underneath them. As long as they're commented out, nobody, like the computer's not going to run them. And you can always delete them later if they get in the way, but it's helpful for not forgetting what you're supposed to be doing. And it's very similar in concept to rubber duckying, which I'm pretty sure you guys talked about. Like, it's just like talking through or writing through, like in a way that's easy for you, what you're trying to do. Because sometimes when you get into the actual act of writing code, you can get stuck on like, well, what property is this? And can I do that? And, you know, you run down the rabbit hole of documentation and then you forget what you were actually doing. And it's, it's a struggle. The struggle is real. Whatever you can do to help yourself keep moving is awesome. Oh, sorry. Any more questions before we move on to visual design? All right, cool. All right, so visual design is also called user interface design, depending on who you're talking to, what you're looking at. It's often what people think about when they talk about design. I wanted to start with talking about design thinking and all of that kind of stuff, because that's the part of design people often don't know about, because visual design is the stuff you can see. And the stuff you can see is most often what people know about. So it's images, typography, which is really just words, and space and layout and color, all help improve how things get used and, frankly, how they look. I'm a designer. I'm not going to tell you that how things look don't matter. I will tell you that in my experience, how they function matters more than how they look. So just to keep that in mind. But how it looks does matter from the standpoint of, if it looks really sketchy, you're going to have people leave, right? Because like, if it looks like a website that hasn't been updated since 1995, most people's like, this is spam. Like, their like little flashers go off and are just like, close before this thing installs a virus on my computer. So visual design matters. It also matters from a communication standpoint, right? So visual design helps you say in a visual way what you're trying to say. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. Oh no, my slide failed. Oh, I'm going to pretend that animation was intentional and not something that randomly got added in Google Slides. So visual design and graphic design, not the same thing. They have a ton in common. However, as someone that's worked with trying to help graphic designers figure out how to design for digital, it's difficult. So, and that being said, also, I get super nervous whenever anybody asks me to do print design, like super, super nervous. They're very, very different from each other. And like, yes, they're both visual and people can do the same thing. But the biggest, most important parts of visual design, in my experience, involve being able to think in many sizes all at once, right? So you guys kind of chatted about responsive design recently, briefly. Like it's a word that gets thrown out a lot. Mobile design, mobile first design, like also is very much related. But being able to have in your head, yeah, you guys are going to continue covering it. It's not going to go away. It's a big part of building stuff. But being able to kind of think through, okay, this is a really small screen. What can I do here? But then also, what can I do on a tablet? What can I do on like a laptop? What can I do on a desktop, right? So there's like that idea of solving a problem, but not just for like one particular context. Because the thing that's really hard about digital layout and digital design is that you don't get to decide what the people that are viewing your product view your product on, right? They may be on a MacBook Pro. They might be on like a 7-inch tablet. Really hope they're not on a smartwatch because most websites do not play well. But like, you know, they could be on a phone. They could be on a horizontal phone instead of on a vertical phone. There's all these different like just aspects to how somebody views something. And even something as simple as, is it a PC or is it a Mac, has implications for how it looks. So you guys talked about normalize, right? Normalize CSS. Resets are awesome and will make your lives so much easier. I'm passionate about resets. You want to know why? Because the number of times where I've like spent a bunch of time building something on my computer and then run it on like a PC and had like the styles go like super wonky only because like even Chrome and Firefox, which are cross-platform, they render things differently depending on the context of your computer. So reset style sheets, they load a whole bunch of code, but they're super helpful because they're optimized to basically give you an even baseline across different platforms. So yeah, worth it. It's the front-end developer version of I spent the entire day looking for a semicolon. Is trying to figure out like, why in the world is Firefox adding a box around my element when it's not supposed to be? It's the problems like that as a dev make you just kind of want to shove your head through your computer. I'd like to say that those problems go away the longer that you've worked in the industry. They get slightly less common, and you learn to go for a walk. So unless you're under a major deadline and then you just sit there and be grumpy. All right, we're gonna jump out of this into a larger graphic that I made for you guys. Oh, I know that early on you were talking about command tab. I wanted to give you guys a quick note for anybody that's coming from a PC. If you know PC shortcuts, try your PC shortcut with command and the shortcut key. Doesn't always work, but it's like a solid 50 to 60% of the time. I've worked on both a lot. So this, I actually built this in draw.io, as you guys might have guessed. This is actually based off of the list you guys came up with in the first week. It's loosely based off of my own experience. So I'm not going to say that this is like 100% perfect. Don't use this as like, well, Christy said that this is DevOps and not backend, or, you know, plus the names all change depending on the company you're in. So this is just to give you guys a rough idea of like where in the technology stack things live, right? And honestly, doing this boot camp is a decent launch place for most of these. Not all of them. Like some of them you're going to need to pick up some more skills in order to actually do out in the world. But you're like onto the first stepping stone, right? And after you get onto the first stepping stone, you get to decide where you want to jump. So Laura has this. I posted it in the resources. I'll double check. Pretty sure I posted it in the resources. If I didn't, I'll make sure that it gets there. And this is just hopefully a useful visual reference for you guys to think about what. Thank you. Somebody just said it's easy. It's very easy to look at. I was going for easy to synthesize versus super pretty. But we're going to actually talk about this sort of top tier section most in what I'm covering with you guys. But if you're interested in stuff in here, that doesn't mean you don't need any of the skills for down here. Can you guys see my mouse? I just realized that it's like probably really tiny. But they're so it's, I have a favorite graphic, frankly, that when I was looking it up earlier, I noticed that apparently certain backend devs think it's like a dig, but I don't take it that way. So this is a meme that's gone around the internet for a really long time. It's the full stack horse. I really like this because every full stack developer that I've ever met has a wide range of skills and something that they're super, super good at. So like whether that's back end or whether that's front end or whether that's like the middle layer of like building APIs and like maximizing how API requests work, like, and making them from the front end, there's like a whole bunch of different pieces of this. I just want to show you guys this because it's my favorite visual for how to like think through, become a full stack dev. Like I'm a full stack dev, but I can design and build your database. You just probably don't want me to, like, because A, I'm rusty, and B, like, my solution won't be as good as someone who builds databases all the time. It's just the reality, right? So if you're at a really small company, you may have to do the whole horse front to back. But if you're at a bigger company, most likely you're going to be somewhat specializing, but you need to be able to speak the language of all of it, which is why like we're not creating customized boot camps for like, here's front end development, here's back end development, here's, you know, all these little pieces. Yeah, that's my spiel on full stack. I just wanted you guys, it took me a long time to realize that like, it's important to understand full stack and it's okay to specialize, right? So that's a really important thing. It's okay to utilize the things that you're super passionate about and to be a little more specialized in those things. Yeah, because if you're more passionate about it, you're going to keep learning about it, and that's important. Let's see. Oh, I X'd out of this. All right. So yeah, so we're covering this front section. Like I mentioned, I started as a front-end developer who did design stuff. Read the job description. use the labels for searching and read the job description, because sometimes they throw interesting stuff at you. And also, just another, why is it important that we talk about this stuff kind of a deal. Even if you're a back-end engineer, being able to understand, at least on like a basic level, what designers do and what people on the like very front end do, is going to make your like cross-functional relationships with team members considerably more friendly. You would be amazed at how many designers and developers I've met who work at the same company who, like, probably if it was socially acceptable would be happy to like have fisticuffs with each other, because like they just have had so many instances of like just completely miscommunicating that they have like deep dislike for the other person. When in fact, if they could just figure out how to speak the same language, they're probably, you know, they actually have a lot in common and understand things pretty similarly. So yeah, it's just important. Team dynamics in tech are hard. And so the more you can speak everybody's language, the better you are overall. All right. We're about to dive into like fun designy things, but I want to stop and give you guys a chance to like take a deep breath and ask a question. All right, actually, let me look at this really quick. Why don't we actually take our 10-minute break now? Or is it too early? Because it's 6:35 there, right?
Yeah, it's 6:30, Christy.
How are people feeling? You all like willing and interested in listening to me talk a little bit more? Yes, no? Do you like a 10-minute break? Okay. Wait, are these thumbs up for the 10-minute break? Yes, okay. Wait, okay. Hold on. I know Max is really good at this like whole polling the audience thing. All right, here's the deal. If you want to take a 10-minute break now, do a thumbs up. If you want to keep going, do the open mouse one. I don't know why this is the symbol for open mouse, but apparently it is.
Latonia doubled. She did in real life.
What if you don't have a preference either way?
It's okay. You don't have to vote. I just wanted to get a general idea of whether
no reaction means whatever works for everybody. All right.
Yeah.
Good job.
All right.
Looks like most people said keep going.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of what I thought too. I apologize for all of the like talking. We're actually through most of the like super me talking part. But like I said, we are kind of reviewing basic principles of UX and visual design in 2 days. So I was trying to figure out how to make this not all talking, and apparently I just didn't manage to figure it out. All right, so we talked about why visual design is important, right? So it affects how your website communicates, how your content communicates, the basic sort of like emotions that people get when they initially see something is another big piece of visual design. But there's pieces that actually build that. We're going to talk about a few of them. So these are 5 principles of visual design we're going to talk about a little bit more in depth. One of them, so we have scale, we have visual hierarchy, we have balance, we have contrast, and we have a fancy word, which is Gestalt, which I believe is German, which basically means looking at the whole thing as a whole. So like looking, that was a terrible sentence. Looking at like a whole page together instead of just each individual element. Because if you see this graphic here, does everybody see a rectangle inside each of those individual pieces? Gestalt has to do with that, like, you know, those optical illusions where you have a bunch of shapes next to each other and they make different things depending on how you look at them. That's like a human thing. Like our brains do this like weird pattern finding. So it's always important to look at stuff you're like doing layouts and things like, how does it all function together, right? That's important because people will look at it that way, whether they need to or not. We don't even think about it, we just do it. It's just how our brains work. Art, design, psychology, all attached to each other. Gestalt question. Yep. So Caroline's asking how Gestalt relates to our desire for like closure when we look at an image. I figure ground principles from psychology. So like these are actually, those are 2 huge things in design, frankly. So desire for things to look cohesive is a big part of, actually we're going to talk about how to pick colors and type so that things feel cohesive and attached to each other. This is one of those things where there's not like, I wish I could give you like a ruler and just be like, if it's measured on the ruler correctly, it all fits together. You kind of have to just look at a lot of stuff and get a basic idea for what fits together. The advantage of it is that you guys have been looking at stuff your whole lives. It's just learning to like think about how you're looking at stuff and paying attention to certain details that'll help you figure out like, oh, this is why those things work together. And I'm going to give you a fun kind of goofy exercise to do tonight that's related to typography that is just kind of gives you a better idea of like how to look at like paragraphs and how to space them and things like that in different contexts to make them look cohesive. All right, getting ahead of myself. Oh, and figure ground principles. So like that has to do with like what you see first, essentially what pops out at you. And that actually relates a lot to color and scale, which is super important because one of the things we're going to talk about is visual hierarchy. Visual hierarchy is incredibly important in page layout because basically creating priority of what you see on a page. It's how you subconsciously direct people to look at the first thing and most important thing you actually want them to see, essentially. All right. So scale. I'm not talking about the one that you stand on, just for the record. You guys are familiar with the concept of scales in terms of like, this is a scale more like from extra large to itty bitty, basically, right? So if I asked you guys what size disclosure text would be, what size would it be? Just take a default stab. And I'm not asking for like a pixel value. I'm talking like, would it be like extra large, biggest thing on the page? Or like, would it be like one of the smallest things on the page? Yep, I got one vote for small. Yeah, so disclosure text is most often like slightly lighter, smaller, and italicized because all of those things make it not stick out. It's the fine print, right? Like it needs to be there, but yeah, sorry, disclosure text, yeah, the fine print on a website. So like oh, it has to be there, but we don't really care if you want to see it. If anybody's ever looked for the unsubscribe link in an email, this is a good example of that, right? People make the things they want to hide really tiny. There are actual laws about how tiny you're allowed to make them, because especially for things like unsubscribe links, they have to be there. Anyways, that's a whole separate regulation, and design is a fun thing. I'm probably going to repeat this a bunch of times in these slides, but when in doubt, when you're working on a design, keep it really simple. So pick 3 basic sizes of text. See how far you can get in your design just using those 3. Because the more visual continuity you have, like keeping it really simple automatically creates visual continuity when things are all the same, which makes it easier to then make things smaller so that they hide, or hide a little bit, or make things bigger so that they pop out, right? So if you have a baseline that most things fit in, that kind of sets your basic ground, right? A lot of people, when they first start trying to design stuff, are like, well, this should be this size, that should be that size. And it ends up creating this kind of like popcorn effect of like, everything is just kind of semi-important and nothing is important because you try to make everything important, which is why scale matters. Scale and visual hierarchy, super connected to each other. Like I said, we were just talking about big things, like important things should be bigger, and smaller things should be less important. It is still important to read the fine print, but that's a whole separate topic. So when in doubt, when you're starting on a layout, keep everything, start with everything around medium, around a similar kind of size, and then say okay, this is the most important thing, make it bigger, and make the supporting stuff smaller, and then kind of see how that feels. So we're going to actually jump out of my slides for a second, take a look at a couple of websites, and talk about what is the most important. All right, I think you guys have already looked at Wayfair once, but I blame the fact that I worked at a furniture company for 3 years. So I spend way too much time looking at furniture. I spent way too much time looking at furniture websites. All right, so just on this what's called the above the fold view for Wayfair, who can tell me what sticks out as the most important thing?
The feature image.
Yep. Yeah, so you have this big feature image slider. Funny note about sliders. People think that when you put a whole bunch of stuff in a slider, it makes all the stuff in the slider important. The first element in the slider is actually the only one that's really important. It's probably the only one that most of the people coming to your website will actually see.
Nav?
Yep, the navigation is pretty big. So it takes up a lot of space, but the text isn't huge, right? So size can also be about the amount of space something takes up. It doesn't have to be, that space can be white space. It doesn't have to be actual graphic space, graphic is meaning images. Yep, the logo sticks out. The bold fonts, yep. I'm gonna scroll down here a little bit. So this is an interesting one. See how they're using a hover effect to make it make the one that my mouse is over stick out. This is a really common way to orient a user on the page in terms of people lose their mouses a lot. So mice, whatever. Yeah, there is grid design for the product images. Yay, we're noticing grid design. White space between items, yes. So white space between items is really key. like I said, it's that whole Gestalt feature, right? Like looking at everything all together. If you have too many things all squished together, it's hard for humans to see them all. I call it the grocery store effect. If anybody's ever felt visually overwhelmed when trying to go to the grocery store and find something on a shelf, because all those packages are competing with each other and there's lots of small things. Definitely at Wegmans. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so the clean font, definitely, that's part of Wayfair's aesthetic, right? Is that they're very clean, and a little bit minimal. There. We're gonna jump down here and then we're gonna jump back to my slides. All right, so we just talked about visual hierarchy and scale a little bit. So it's how big things are, how they're organized, right? It's how you guide people through the page. But balance is another really important part of guiding people through the page. So if you have all of the important stuff in one little left-leaning nav bar over on the left side, it's possible that your user is going to be so busy looking at all the stuff on the left side, they're never going to see the rest of the content of the page. So it's important to think about how somebody's eye moves around the page, right? How they move through stuff. And balance helps with that. So an example is, if you notice, like, so this text balances out the card graphic, right? They have a similar visual weight. And as a result, you pretty much see both of them at the same time. This is another fun example of balance, right? So you have a graphic, which graphics, like images, have pretty heavy visual weight most of the time, unless they're really empty. And this could go full width, but it might be hard for a user to actually look at. So instead, what they're doing is they're balancing that with something that's pretty empty. And this text is big, but it doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be huge text in order for it to stick out, right? Like, I'm guessing most of you saw this button almost immediately when you looked at this, right? Because it's got a lot of space around it. And so as a result, it sticks out. Oh, somebody made a comment about terms. I made a list of vocabulary for you guys because I know that most of you don't necessarily interact with visual speak on a regular basis. And that is listed in Dana's resource sheet that she made and added to module 3. We will move this stuff over to Trello once we have the Trello structure figured out. I just wanted you all to be able to find it for later. All right. Contrast. This one also crosses over into accessibility a little bit. So contrast is important for visual contrast is important for being able to read text, just from a basic standpoint. There actually are accessibility checkers you can use to put in the size of your type and what kind of background it's going to be on to see whether it has enough visual difference to be easily legible for people that have trouble seeing. But there's also contrast, like that button on the larger space, blank space around it, right? That's a visual contrast piece. You have a dark button on a larger, like, light space. So it's often, like, contrast is also important because it normally communicates something, right? You guys are familiar with, like, links being a different color on the internet than, like, regular text. But have you noticed that some websites also have links and then they have, like, symbols next to them so that you know that the link opens in a new page? You notice that? So that's another way of, like, contrasting. When you create differences of things, it basically creates like a visual system to communicate to the user without you having to tell them, like, this link opens in a new page. Like, they just see that and they're like, oh, this link does something different than a standard link because it's got a symbol next to it, right? And being able to tap into people's like sort of visual understanding of how software works, how like the internet works, is one of the many reasons to follow best practices when you're laying stuff out. Because if you reinvent stuff, then the user has to like work extra hard to figure out what's going on in the visual system of your web application or just application in general. Gestalt, we already kind of talked about this quite a bit. So it's how the whole page works together, stepping back and looking at everything. Oh, Carolyn, your comment about the extra mouse or trackpad steps to open a link, a tab in a new window. I personally am a big fan of, if you hold down Command and click on a Mac, it'll auto open in a new tab, just for the record. Favorite shortcut commands. You guys didn't know I was going to be sprinkling in my favorite Mac shortcuts into this, but I can't actually live without that feature. So I will also admit to being a person that has about 40 tabs open at all times, though. So everybody's a little different. All right. We are actually, I am going to insist that we take a break at this point because we're going to dive into color and typography, which is the back part of our class. And I have some fun exercises for you guys to do related to color and typography that are goofy and involve a couple of Chrome extensions that make life a little more fun. So it's 6:55. Do we normally do 15 minutes or 10 minutes?
15.
15? All right. So I will see you guys all back here at 7:10. All right. And I'll stick around if anybody has questions or wants to chat about life. I'll probably disappear for 5 minutes or something to say hi to my toddler, but otherwise.
Caitlin.
Hey, Corey.
Hey, can we do a breakout section? I just have a little technical question for GitHub, if you
Yes.
are available.
Sure, no problem.
Okay.
Christy, can you make me co-host?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
You're fine. All right, let me stop sharing here. All right, you should be good.
Yep, looks good. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Corey, give me 1 second.
Mhm.
Excuse me, Christy.
Mhm.
Hi, this is Latonia. You talked about how you started as a front-end developer, right?
Mhm.
Is that something that we should expect? Is that more realistic than trying to be a full stack developer out the gate?
Interesting question. So for me, I actually only applied to front-end jobs when I started. But a big part of that was actually just because I hadn't actually done full stack, like I hadn't learned full stack yet completely. So for me, that was the most accessible because of my design background.
Mhm.
it also depends a lot on the company, right? So like I know Max has talked about how his company always hires people who are full stack or who are aspiring full stack.
Mhm.
And there are a certain number of companies that feel that way. There are other companies that hire specifically for like front end, back end roles. And so, yeah, it kind of just depends. Like,
Okay.
I would say that feel free to like apply for both if like if full stack like appeals to you, go for full stack. Like it's not yeah,
Yeah.
they're just different jobs. Like it's not like greater than or less than in any way. It's like
Yeah.
they're just different specialties, truthfully.
Okay.
And especially if you're working on a website or an application that's like using an intensive JavaScript framework like Angular or React or Vue or Svelte, there's a bunch of them at this point. Those all, being a front end developer is a big job. It's not, because you're really handling everything, like you're handling data manipulation and like, and how it all gets displayed, like, which is actually quite a lot. Like, it doesn't sound like a lot, but there's a lot of state management, meaning like keeping track of what the user has done and what they haven't in the application, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So.
Is that a lot of automation? It sounds like that might involve.
It's not so much. So state management, you'll get into this in React, but it's really about like, so it's stuff like basically keeping track of what the user has or has not done. So in an e-commerce context, it might be keeping track of what the user has added to their cart.
Yeah.
But state management, like with JavaScript libraries, will allow you to not have to send that information back to a server to store it. So like you can basically keep like somebody's cart information in their web browser, where historically you would have had to basically cookie that user and then set up that user profile kind of on the back, like on the server. And then every time you wanted to like get whether or not like figure out what that person's cart is, you would have to like run back to the server, grab the cart information and then display it. Whereas now you keep all of that stuff locally and then you kind of send it back to the server just so you don't lose it, right? So like,
Okay.
so it's stuff like that. There's much more intensive things you can do, but it creates like a whole sort of sub data structure on the front end of like, how are you storing state? Like, how are you storing state efficiently so you're able to get the information you need at the times that you need it? Which historically, like when I started, that was all back end. But in the last like 4 or 5 years, it's really become a big part of front end as well. So.
Thank you. No, I'm interested in full stack. I was doing my markups and I just noticed that there weren't a whole lot of full stack, and it could just be like the time or whatever where I was looking. It could be anything, but I don't know. I just figured I would ask if it's really realistic being so new to the field.
Yeah, I think it depends a lot on the company. The reality is that getting like, I will say this with a certain grain of salt, but any job you can get that's going to get your foot in the door with you building stuff as a brand new dev is a positive. Because like there are positives and negatives to every team. You should still obviously like be careful about like, you know, asking good questions of the teams that you're going to be working on, to understand more about like how good they are about like promoting professional development and like working together to like keep up to date on their skills and that kind of stuff. But like just getting to a point where you're being paid to work on this stuff all the time is a really big deal. I spent 6 months basically doing my own personal kind of a boot camp. And then I probably doubled or tripled my skills in the following year at my first job, because you run into a whole bunch of like new things, because every company uses a slightly different system and like a slightly different version of things. And so just through the process of being like, what does that do? I got to figure out what that does so that I can solve my problem. You just learn a crazy amount. And like, you know, you Google, and then like, if you get stuck, you ask the people around you, or like you ask the senior dev, and they're like, oh yeah, blah, 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 blah. Like you'll learn about ternary operators in JavaScript at some point.
Okay.
I think I was working as a developer for like 6 or 8 months before I knew what a ternary operator was.
Okay.
Because it was just like, I never used it. I probably covered it when I was learning, but then I never used it, so I didn't like remember it.
I literally can't even understand what you're saying, so I have no idea what it is.
Someday you'll be looking at a piece of JavaScript code and there'll be a question mark in it, and you'll be like, why is there a question mark?
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's what happened. That's what happened to me. I was looking at something and I was like, question mark. I literally Googled what does question mark mean in JavaScript.
Okay.
And then learned about ternary operators, and I've loved them ever since. Like, it's just one of those things where it's like, but there's Caitlin can probably speak to this more since she used to be a teacher, but like I think that being a first year dev is akin a little bit like being a first year teacher, in the sense that you're just like, you're really relearning a lot of stuff all the time, because you're just like, so it takes as much energy and time as you're able to put at it, and you'll grow as fast as you're able to do that, right? So
yeah.
Like, I learned Git because I had to teach, our team was thinking about switching over to it. And so I was like, I know some stuff about Git. I should figure this out a little bit more in depth. So then I learned it and helped the rest of the team learn it too.
I love doing that kind of stuff, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's good. But it's helpful and important to try and end up on a team where people are growing and have a growth mindset.
Yeah.
But it also is like, if you have to choose between no job and a team where like people have like middling mindsets about stuff, just getting to a place where you're being paid to code for a living is a huge step.
Okay.
This is not me telling you to settle right out the gate. I'm just saying.
No,
like,
I understand what you're saying, because I won't have opportunities if I have nothing. So just start somewhere, and then you can grow from there.
Well, and a lot of companies have like, I think this has changed somewhat, but like, it's getting that first company and take a kind of a risk on you, right, when you're brand new. And then after that, you have a certain amount of technical experience that you just learn from the process of like getting used to a new code base, and like figuring out how other people write code, and like collaborating on a team. And even if any new team you join after that like does things totally differently, it's like, oh, you've been through the process of how to like figure out how to do this once, and it's easier the second time, right? And so most companies know that, and so like they're more open to hiring someone who doesn't have a perfect like match of skills, as long as they have like more technical experience, if that makes sense. But yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, that was a long answer to a short question.
No, it's fine. I feel bad. I probably cut into your bathroom break, but thank you.
It's all good. Actually, that's a good reminder. I should probably go do that real quick. I'll be right back. Anyone have questions while we're hanging out waiting for everybody to get back? I know there's like a ton in the slides we've been going over. It's part of the reason I wanted you guys to have the slide deck so you can be like, wait, when she was talking about what was it? You can just go look at my slides. Or you can Slack me. That's fine too.
I know when we get more into color based on what's in the slides, I get kind of confused when you have the complementary system and then there's the square system and it gets like, what? And I know I had a web class up at SU. This was in 1999. Okay, it's a real cutting edge modern stuff. My professor, Dave Lankus, he had been a graphic designer before he became a librarian and so forth. And he was trying to explain to us for RGB, you basically have two systems, the additive and the subtractive or whatever. And that depend, what main colors you put together affects the end color depending which of those systems you use. So I know when you get to colors, I'm going to be like, breakout ROM. Just warning you.
It's all good. I'm gonna treat tell you guys a wonderful hack when it comes to figuring out how to set up color schemes for websites. We'll get there in just a few minutes, but frankly, there's a shortcut for how to figure out how to develop like sort of basic ideas for color schemes, because as a designer, I love color schemes, and I simultaneously love color schemes and I hate setting them up. So there's a few shortcuts to kind of get you much closer to what you're looking for quicker, and they're very accessible for people who are not overly design focused. So
can you trust your own visual instincts? Probably not.
Well, that's actually, we'll talk about this at the end of class too, but that's actually something I want to let you guys know. Like, as you guys are working on your capstone and you're kind of like thinking about how to design stuff, feel free to like send me screenshots or questions or whatever. I'm happy to, I've done enough working on teams at this point that I'm pretty sure I'm like a pretty decent editor. So like from the standpoint of giving feedback, so I will be honest with you, but I won't be mean.
Kind.
So, it's, yeah. I'm happy to give people feedback and point you in the right direction. Granted, I will be honest about the fact that the right direction is, of course, my opinion. So
you're colorblind. Forget it. Right.
So I actually learned color theory as a kid because my dad's red-green colorblind. So I grew up teaching him or helping him pick out clothes because, like, if my mom wasn't home, he'd just be like, wait, do these match? Like, he'd pull out like a shirt and a pair of pants. Yes, they match. Okay. At this point, I'm gonna assume that everybody's back, even though not everybody's sharing their screen. All right, cool. So I'm gonna jump back into sharing my screen, and by sharing their screen, I mean having their camera on. It's the end of the day here, and it's even more the end of the day for you guys. I don't know if I mentioned it, but I'm actually an hour behind you. I no longer live in Syracuse. I'm now in St. Louis. So I went from one S city to another. All right. So we're going to go over the, this is going to attempt to be the least technical conversation about colors. If you feel stuck, please raise your hand and just be like, what are you talking about? But okay, so color and typography. two things that actually affect your website a lot, but that a lot of people on the web don't know a ton about. So color, I would say, is much more well known. I'm not giving it to you for homework because it's kind of like a lot of reading. But I did actually suggest to you guys, there's like, honestly, hands down, the best web typography resource I've ever found, because it's actually written for designers and developers who are working on digital stuff. Most typography resources are like aimed at like graphic designers. I have a link to that for you guys. Anyways, first, color. All right, so we have this word here, hue. Anybody ever heard the word hue before?
Yes.
Awesome. So hue, not in the name of like, not as in the first name of a person, but like hue as in a color. So that's like the base color. So if you think like your primary colors, like the ones you learn when you're like, there's like a mouse book, kid's book with primary colors in it. That's like those. So your primary colors are all their original hue. So that's no, yes, Dana, you have to be careful with the use of red because it does have very specific meaning, which actually I didn't make a slide for, but I will talk about that quickly. But so hue is very much like, it's your boldest, most like pure version of the color. This is, think if you were making a painting, this is the like straight out of the tube like color. That's your hue. So that's like, so hue is like red, green, blue, violet, yellow. We got a whole list of these on the screen. I don't need to read them all to you. But when you get into things like light blue or dark blue, those are values. So if you're adding white to something to make it lighter, or you're adding black to something to make it darker, right? That's your value. So it's how light something is or how dark something is. So yeah, it can actually be related to opacity. Latanya just mentioned opacity. If you have something over a white background and you make it slightly, you actually, because there's a CSS rule for opacity, you can make it more transparent. It'll actually make it lighter. If it's over a dark background and it's transparent, it'll make it darker. It's kind of the same thought, right? The same concept is like, you add white paint to it, you add black paint to it, like that concept. There we go. So saturation. Saturation's a little bit different. Hue and value, I feel like we kind of learn a little bit about, you know, like you get those in elementary school art and things like that, because you actually see those. You can use them with paint, right? You can add white and black to like a straight color, that kind of stuff. So saturation is actually a digital thing. So you can't do saturation on paper. This is actually one of the reasons that I struggle with like print design, because I always forget stuff like that. And then if you like try to print a really saturated color, it's just disappointing. Because saturation is like how intense and bright a color is. So something that's totally desaturated is gray. And then something that's like fully pumped up is really, really bright. So if you look at each of these parts of the color wheel, it's like, it's gray all the way up to like the full amped up color. Saturation can be really useful for like, it's another, like if you have stuff that you want to fade into the background, or if you're picking a background color, for example, desaturating the color is a good way, is a good thing to do, because it helps it fade into the background. Things that are gray tend to be very neutral. Things that are fully white and fully black actually tend to like pop out when it comes to like a visual spectrum. It's just sort of how our eyes work, basically. It's actually one of the reasons I don't think we're not explicitly going to cover this, but it's one of the reasons that the majority of the time, text on a website that looks black is not actually black. So like it's very close to black, but it's not completely black, because if you use full black text on a full white background, they have like a vibrate relationship with each other almost, which like even though you might not be aware of it when you're reading it, it kind of gives you eye strain a little bit. So it's just like, yeah, it's just one of those things, like they don't sit on the same plane. Things that are slightly knocked back from white and slightly knocked back from black, they kind of feel flat together, like they fit, right? And when something feels like it's on a fully flat surface, that can be really useful, especially for something like words that you don't necessarily want to have a lot of three-dimensionality to them. You just want them to be words. All right, this is the text visual slide. I wanted you guys to understand part of the reason we just talked about hue, value, and saturation is that the three primary ways of doing color in like on web and in software all relate to those in some form or fashion. So hex is by far the most common. So you have, it's essentially a scale. So 0, 0, 0 is on one end and FF is on the other end. And you're like, okay, you told me this was a scale. Why are we using letters? There's, we just went from numbers all the way to letters. So it basically is expanding out our range. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then you go A, B, D, C, E, F. So you're actually adding out, like instead of it being on a 10-point system, it's how many letters did I just add? I can't count. That's like 16. It makes the range wider. So it gives you a wider spectrum of colors you can make. And then the fact that there's 2 letters for each one also expands that out. So like, I gave you guys some examples of like your most basic, like very common colors. So somebody just asked, we don't need most of this memorized. You 100% don't need it memorized. If you ask me to take a color that's not black, white, or a standard set of gray, and convert it into a hex value, I would add it to a code editor and then pull it up in the browser. So you can learn them if you feel like it, but I just want you to understand how they work. That's all that really matters. Personally, I file that under things that I consider a waste of brain space, but I need to know how they function so that I can find them on the internet, which is why if the internet ever dies, I'll be in big trouble because there's a whole category of my brain that exists in that way. But yeah, all right, cool. So we talked about, so there's red, green, and blue that's the primary, those are the primary colors for that mix to make colors on the web and in software and most screens, frankly. Another reason I'm bad at print design is that print uses a whole different, version of like, they use CMYK, which is cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. So it's just a whole different color scale, which I think, Carolyn, you were mentioning you were having issues. It's like, it's additive versus subtractive. We don't need to go into any of that. You just need to know that all the colors you see on the web are basically a mix of red, green, and blue with black or white mixed in. And the lowercase a. So lowercase a is alpha, which is actually a measure of opacity. So if you want something to be, and not opacity in the sense of like adding white to it, this is transparency. So like if you want something to be semi-transparent, you can actually set the color to be RGB and then add an A value and it will automatically read as transparent. So, and it's the same thing for HSL colors. You can add a transparency element to it. So hex values, you have their three, you have your red, green, and blue, and they're each 2 letters. The cool thing, I didn't shorten these for you guys, but when both letters for a color are the same, and that's true for all 3 colors, you can actually just shorten them. So this black can be 000, like white can be FFF, red can be F00, that kind of stuff. Not a huge deal, but yeah. So it's just it's just hex values you're gonna see all over the place. RGB is a little bit less common, but it's the same concept. So you're going between 0 and 255, and depending on how high the number is how close to heavy, how heavy that color is in the mix, right? So it's think about them like volume. The higher the number, so red here, see, it's FFF is on the top of the scale. For red and RGB, it's 255. So it's if you think about it like a chart, like a bar chart, the colors, the numbers are how high each bar, how much of each color is mixed in. That being said, like I said, I very rarely just be I think this is the hex value for the color that I want. I normally pull it up in a photo program, like Envision Studio, in Figma, Sketch, Photoshop, or just find it on a website and pull it up in the code. Corey, did you have a question?
Yeah, so I see there's 3 different code systems here for colors.
Yep.
So are they usable in cross coding languages?
Yep. Yeah, so they're all usable in the web and all usable in software applications.
Okay, so it's they are universally accepted.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Yeah. And HSL is actually one that I only learned about last year, but it's actually kind of cool because it has one value for your hue, which is remember that base color. And it's essentially if you have a circle that has all the colors in the rainbow arranged around the circle, that hue is just the degree, it's the angle of how far along the circle you are. So that's why it maxes out at 359, technically 359.999. It's because it's how far around the circle you can go. So you're basically picking a hue off of that circle, and then you can adjust your saturation and your lightness. HSL is really nice from if you want to create a scale of a color that adds black and white. It's really easy because you can just pick your hue, and then you can basically take your saturation and your lightness and bump them up and down to make your scale, which is that's a lot harder to do in hex and RGB because you have to know how they kind of mix together and all that kind of stuff. So HSL is really nice because you basically just pick your color, and then you can I want it darker, I want it lighter. And it also has that alpha transparency piece to it. All right, very quickly, I want to show you guys a really super useful shortcut that will help you find color values for stuff that is related to stuff you already know how to do. So I had to laugh really hard when you guys Max was talking about how nobody knows the shortcut for developer tools, because I literally use it about 1,000 times a day. But it's Command Alt I, in case anybody's wondering. But that being said, you can always inspect element, get to the same place. But what I wanted to show you, so we're inspecting this button here. So we have
Christy,
our button
quick
color.
question.
Yep.
On a Mac, does that translate into Command Option I?
Yes, Command
Okay.
Option I.
Thank you.
Sorry. I have an older Mac keyboard that's not attached. It's an external keyboard that has both Alt and Option on it. So, but yeah, it's Command Option I. So Can you guys see this, or should I make it a little bit bigger?
You could.
Maybe,
Okay. So let me make it a little bit bigger.
maybe a little bigger. I know a couple of students like it to be a little bit larger.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. I mess with the size on my dev tools all the time. Oh, I was also laughing when you guys were talking about nobody ever opens their dev tools on the right-hand side, because I do, but it's because most of the time I work on a really big monitor. And so it's actually really helpful to have them like over to the side, because I can see all the style. Like it's easier to see a ton of styles at once, which is helpful when you're debugging a bunch of stuff. All right. Anyway, back to colors. So we have this background color here, right? Which the browser really conveniently tells you like, hey, here's the hex value for this color with this little color chip right here. So two things. See, when I hovered over this, it says open color picker, shift click to change color format. So if you hold down shift and click on this little color chip, it will actually change. Sorry, my voice is having trouble. It will actually change from like whatever like format it is. So I just changed from hex to RGB to HSL.
Oh.
And your alpha values are always really easy, because anything that doesn't have an alpha value attached to it is 1, right? So it's fully opaque. It's not transparent at all. But yeah, so if you're like, I want to know, you see a color that you're interested in, you're like, I really like this purple, I want to use it for something. And you're like, but I'm working in HSL or I'm working in RGB. Like, well, you can just go in here and click on that. So I would say the only reason that like I personally like HSL over RGB or hex is because of that sort of like that ability to easily create a scale, which we'll talk about a little bit more in design systems, but it's pretty common to like have like 3 main colors and then have scales off of those, because the scales are useful for doing things like creating button hover effects, right? Or shadows, or things like that, where you're still using the same color family. It's just that it's a little bit darker or a little bit lighter. But oh, I wanted to tell you one more thing. So you can shift click on this and it'll change your format. You can also control click on it, and the browser actually turns into a color picking tool for you. So you don't need a special website to do a color picker. If you have a website where you're like, I really like the teal on that couch. Like, I think this is kind of an awesome color. I want to use it in my project. You can literally just go to like one part of the website, click on it, and all of a sudden, hey, look, I now have the hex value for this color. And if I decide that I want it in a different like format, I can just arrow through the format. It's not going to save any of this for you, but it's easy enough to just copy, like you can copy and paste from in here.
Mm-hmm.
So and this is also another way that you can mess with colors. Like if you're like, I wonder what this website would look like if all the like this button background color was actually like, I'm actually just going to use, there's also a whole bunch of keyword shortcuts for colors that you can just like type in, which I often use when I'm just like playing with stuff. Because like I said, nobody has space in their brain for hex values. All right, some people have space in their brain for hex values, but I'm not one of them. But yeah, so you can just modify stuff and be like, I wonder what wafer looks like with blue buttons. Now it has royal blue buttons. Or you can be like, I feel like changing the background color on this. Like, what happens if I make this 0 instead? Of course, I'm not actually sure exactly which. Oh, I just changed the text color, not background. Sorry, not background color. I can't read and talk at the same time sometimes. That being said, I would not particularly suggest yellow text inside of a purple button, but to each their own. But yeah, so it's much faster as a general rule to just inspect element and use your browser as a color picker. Especially if you like the color palette on a particular, you can even use ones that are like they're not like active rules, you can do that too, just to mess with like, just use the color picker. If you find like you're on a website and you're like, I like the color in that particular photo or whatever, you can always open in the developer tools, do element style, do color white, and now you have a color picker. So this is accessible to you like literally wherever you are on the web. If you're using DevTools, you have a color picker readily available. That being said, this is not actually my color palette hack, but we're gonna talk about that in a sec. So color palettes. Every website has a color palette. Every single website has a color palette. Even if that color palette is literally like black and white, it still has a color palette. This color palette is actually from Carbon, which is a design system created by IBM. But this is what they use. This is the colors they use for like all of their applications, particularly their internal applications. If this looks incredibly simple, it should. So like I said, with the whole keep it simple principle, the easiest way to keep it simple is the easiest way to keep things feeling visually cohesive is to keep the range of things you're using pretty minimal. Oh, sorry, I missed that question in the. Yeah, that gray circle will follow you around whenever you have the little color inspector thing open. I would encourage you to just play with it a little bit, and you'll get used to how it like kind of functions. It's very much like an eyedropper tool. If you've ever used anything like Photoshop, it's the same. It's the same concept. But basically, what IBM has going on here is they have a blue hue that they have a full scale on, like from white to black, basically, like from light to dark, all the way light to all the way dark. And then they have a gray scale with all the way light and all the way dark. And then they have these reserved colors over here that like look totally out of the norm. And there's a reason for that. So they look totally out of the norm because these are colors for alerts. I think Dana mentioned that she got chastised for using bright red. It's super common that most design systems have some version of red that's like error, like that literally just means error, like warning, this is an error, like we have a problem. Orange is warning. It's normally orange and yellow depending on your context. Often there's one missing in here that you often see. So green is normally success. So like if you have like an alert message that says like something was successful, it's normally in some version of green. There's also often one that's in blue, which it makes sense that you don't have blue because their primary color is blue, but is like information, so it's like neutral. But so yeah, those are the like most common things. So I would really, really encourage you guys, when you're trying to figure out colors for your capstone, start with one primary color, create a full spectrum of it, and a full spectrum of gray, and just see how far you can get in terms of like building stuff. If you start being like, oh, I really wish I could have another color for this, then start looking at like pairing up other colors, because it's just more complicated. And I'm a big fan of like, if I'm having a lot of trouble with the design, take out a bunch of stuff and then see if I can figure it out, because it's just easier when there's fewer moving parts. All right, color palette hack. Oh wait, we have one more slide on color palettes, and then I give you my color palette hack. This was, Carolyn mentioned this earlier. You have like a square color palette. These are all like super fancy, different types of color palettes. Especially when you're starting out I would suggest completely ignoring, frankly, anything that uses more than 2 colors. You could maybe do 3, but I would probably ignore most of the stuff on the right end of this spectrum, because it really just is like, the more colors you use, the more complicated it can get. If you want more colors, I'm not anti-color. If you want more colors, you can, what I would suggest is do that full scale of your primary, and then pick 2 others that you like that go with the color, that, like, you know, they can be ones that are right next to it, or they can be ones that are like super far away, that really contrast. And then have 1 or 2 scale, like, right? So like one, like have that secondary color, and then 1 lighter and 1 darker, and that's it. Just to keep it like, because you can get in this whole like, what color do I use when? And I don't know. And it's just, if you are confused, your design will be confusing, most likely.
On that point of like, I used to like, when I first started in college working on a website, I started really enjoying the fading, where you could have a color and then it fades into another, or it had a sharper look, a gradient, right? Is that involved in this presentation?
Yeah, so you can, I'm not like specifically covering gradients, but you can create gradients pretty easily with CSS. I can actually send you guys like a CSS resource for like how to create gradients. There's like essentially gradient rules in CSS that make it really easy. I would suggest starting out with gradients that are based off of that primary scale if you wanted to do that, right? Like the gradient behind me on my background, like if you're going to do a gradient, keep it analogous, so the colors that are sort of more similar to each other. Because if you do a gradient with colors that are complementary, that are really far away from each other, you're going to end up with like a really muddy color in the middle,
right?
Which you might not like very much.
Gotcha.
But it's up to you. Gradients aren't mandatory. They can be really snazzy when you use them sparingly. Too much gradients is a little bit. It's a little.
Got it.
Yeah, it's a little intense. And it just gets busy, so it's just sort of. It goes back to the whole like, when in doubt, keep it simple. All right, cool. It's funny, I didn't actually, oh, no, I did. All right, so color combinations. Really important thing to know about color combinations. If you're like struggling a lot with trying to figure out, you're like, I don't know what color I want to use. This is like, I'm not a designer. How do I do this? As a general rule, combinations of colors are not like copyrighted entities for particular companies. So it's 100% okay to actually go pick a website, like find a website that you like how it looks, you like the color scheme, and go and inspect the colors. Look at what colors they're using. You can figure out what their primary colors are by looking at like that. It's often, their primary color is often the call to action button color. It's not always, but it often is. So it's often those, like the color that's most frequently used with buttons. So like with Wayfair, this purple is their primary color, because you see it in their logo, you see it here, you see it, it's their link color. So like, it seems crazy, but Wayfair's color scheme is actually very simple. So they are pretty much, the majority of what they're using is this purple in a few different colors, and their version of black, right? And like a few grayscale pieces. The reason that I would tell you to take your primary color and create at least probably 2 or 3 steps in each direction is because, and it's the same thing with with black. Like I would do like 6 or 7 steps between black and white, because when you just set them up in a box, like in sort of this scale like IBM has, before you start applying them to stuff, it's hard to know like, oh, is this gray going to be better for like outlines of, or like little lines that like divide the page, or like, am I really going to like the darker view of like this one? And so it just gives you a few more options. You may not end up using them all, but at least you give yourself a few more like choices on the scale when you're kind of playing with stuff. So let's see. So Wayfair, we have, it's really primarily this purple. Let's do the background. So I just want to emphasize, it's not cheating to go and just like find a color scheme that you like someplace else and use it. If anything, sometimes when I'm looking for visual inspiration for things, I will go like, depending on the type of thing I'm designing for, I will like go look through things like WordPress templates or like website templates that I can just like look through like a bunch of different things. They don't have a ton of like distracting content on them. They just have like a bunch of different designs. You can also use, there's a couple of tools. Adobe Color is one of the most popular ones. That actually gives you inspiration on color palettes you can explore. So you can actually come in here, you can create your own color palettes, but they actually have a ton you can just like kind of riff off of. Most of their color palettes are involve more colors than I would suggest you use. It's just one of those things like, but it's essentially to find a color, I normally start with like, what colors, like for example, Pottery Barn, they're really just using black, their version of black, white, they're using red for like sale stuff, and then they're using this like cream color because the majority of their like extra colors comes from their photography, right? Mm-hmm. They want to keep their color palette really simple because they don't want their color palette to be distracting away from the pictures of all the stuff that they're actually trying to sell. Similar concept with West Elm. They have this sort of basic green as a call out, but most of the rest of their stuff is black and white. But you can also look at color palettes for things like Google Maps, which maybe you guys have never looked at from a design perspective, but they basically have blue, and then they obviously have the green scale of the map, but the actual UI is essentially blue and gray and white.
Can I just make a quick comment?
Yeah.
There have been times when I've tried to color pick from like maybe a nice border color that I like, or maybe it was just a spot of color within a gradient, and sometimes it was hard to capture. So one of the tricks that I've used in the past is just to simply enlarge the image on my screen so that it's easier for the color picker to go in and suck in that color. Mm-hmm. So just want
no, that's a really good point. If it's like, I really like this like blue color, but I can't quite get it. You're like, I don't know if that's, yeah, you can definitely zoom in and see because it doesn't generally change the color to zoom it. So yeah, that's a really good point.
So it says background color and it's that unique purple color, but no, I'm seeing the background as white. Or can you?
Hold on, we have a visitor.
Mm-hmm.
This is my toddler. Hi.
Mhm.
I
Oh
know,
my
I
gosh, she's
know.
gotten so big.
Welcome
She
to
was-
Code Camp. Are you teaching tonight?
All right.
We just want to say good night.
Good night. I love you. All right, go, Daddy. I know, Mommy has cookies, but you can't have them.
Mhm.
We'll go get your pet.
She was actually born in the middle of Cohort 1, so give you a little bit of a time reference. Anyways. Sorry, what were we talking about?
Oh, yeah, I was looking at the inspect screen, and it
Mhm.
said background color, and that it says purple, but just I see the background of this page as being like a off-white. Can you
Mhm.
help me out? And
Yep, so let's see, we are,
oh, you may have
Yeah, so
selected
it's-
that item.
yep, so I actually selected, you're only gonna ever see in the styles over here, whatever you have selected in the elements panel. So
Right.
what I
Right.
have selected, you actually can't see it right now because it's, so I have selected
A
the
button or something.
site-wide banner content.
Got it. Okay,
And that's why
I
it's
caught
that
it.
background, which is interesting that it's actually like being called, but is it, oh, it's probably being inherited, that's why. But
Site-wide
yeah,
banner.
this,
Got it.
yeah, the style panel and the elements panel are actually like just incredibly useful for figuring out, they're super useful for debugging stuff, but they're also really useful just for like understanding how other other websites are using layout and design and those kinds of elements together. Because unlike JavaScript, which generally gets kind of compiled and minimized before it gets pushed out on the web, CSS is like, it also gets minimized, but not in the same way. And so generally like the full display of like HTML and CSS is sort of there to be viewed in the elements and style panels, which is super useful when you're trying to learn how to do a lot of this stuff. And I would just suggest you get kind of like, if you see something visually interesting that on the web and you're like, how did they do that? Just right click and inspect element on it. You can do it on any website. So like, it doesn't hurt to take 3 minutes and investigate like, I wonder what they did. If you don't know exactly what they did, write down what you see and then ask in class.
Mhm.
So, or send me a Slack message about it and I can probably tell you. Or I can find it for you. Story of most developers' lives. I either know it or I can find it. All right. But yeah, so that's, I really personally would recommend that like you find other websites that are using the same types of visual aesthetics that you're interested in your capstone, and then you pull the pieces that you like from those websites and utilize them in your capstone. So like I'm talking color, typography, spacing, like how they use graphics. Don't take the actual graphics because most graphics are copyrighted, but things like this sort of like how they're using, you know, how they use space in their layout, what colors they're using, generally speaking, are not copyrighted. So you can kind of learn from what other people are doing and use that to inform your design. It's simultaneously a shortcut and an awesome way to learn. And I'll tell you a secret, it's what all professional designers do. So
Can I ask a question?
yeah.
What do you recommend as a good site for helping to find fonts that are being used on a website? Is there a place that you generally go to when you're looking for that?
Yes and no. I'm actually about to answer your question because we're about to talk about typography.
Oh, great.
So we're going to talk about typography, and then we're going to talk a little bit about shortcuts for how to figure out what websites what type like typography websites are using in terms of fonts. Because the really nice thing about being a web developer is that you don't have to memorize like, that particular font looks like Arial, like light, right? You don't have to know because you can just look. So it's in the code. If they're using it, it's in the code. And that's another one of those, I probably should know more typography, like different types of type and fonts than I do, but I don't. So it's just because I'm lazy and I just look most of the time. So typography. Technically, typography is actually like, it's the art of arranging type, so letter forms, so that language is easy to read, appealing when it's displayed. Why, as a developer, should you care about typography? Aren't like the designers on your team going to be taking care of most of this? Probably yes. However, as a developer, you're going to be the one most likely who's actually implementing typography that the designers are setting out. So if you understand how to lay out words and how different type and spacing works together, the final product's going to be a lot better. You can technically, things like Envision will allow you to like click on a paragraph and it'll be like, here's how the paragraph is styled. There's like a whole set of rules basically. You can copy and paste that CSS code if you want to. However, you're going to end up with better, cleaner, more reusable CSS if you actually like follow the principles of what is in the design instead of just like copying stuff straight out of like Envision or Zeppelin, or there's a bunch of other handoff tools that that do the same kind of thing. So common typography terms. Typography is one of those things that's like this intense deep rabbit hole. Like I'm talking like there are whole people who like work in the field of like designing type. So a typeface is actually like specifically letters, like particular letter shape. So this is one of those things where you guys can totally continue calling them fonts because otherwise nobody will know what you're talking about in the rest of the world. But like technically speaking, if you ever talk to somebody who's like super into type, a typeface is like Helvetica is a typeface. Times New Roman is a typeface. Technically a font is like Times New Roman italic at 10 point size. So it's so in CSS, when you set your typeface, you're using the font family rule. That's when you use that, you create your font stack, right? You say like, you say Times New Roman, and then you might say serif, but you can have like alternates, right? Like if the computer can't find whatever font file, you can create backups, like fallbacks, not backups, fallbacks for type. At a minimum, you always use a serif or a sans serif. Like you define what it is so that the computer knows what approximately to spoof it as if they can't find the typeface that they're looking for. So I just use the word serif and sans serif, as you can see here. So basically, serif are these little flourishes on the ends of letters. And sans serif letters are much straighter and they don't have those flourishes at the end. So serif actually, part of the reason they exist is that historically they're actually easier to read because they differentiate the letter characters more. There's a whole thing about how they're not as easy to read on digital screens, but the real reason for that is because serif fonts like have been around a lot longer than sans serif fonts have been. And so a lot fewer of them are optimized for like actually reading on digital. Random fact you don't have to keep remembering, but just something to know. There are fonts that have been around for centuries, basically since the printing press was invented. And then there are fonts that are much newer. All right, so couple of things about choosing typefaces. Personally, and this is actually true for color as well, especially when it comes to your capstone, I would worry more about the content of your capstone and getting into work than I would worry about like finding the exact perfect right color. If you do a good job with your CSS, it is easy to swap out color and it is easy to swap out font. You might have to adjust some stuff, especially when it comes to fonts, because as we're going to talk about in a minute, fonts have different fonts are sized differently. So a 16-point font, a 16 points in one font is not equivalent necessarily to a 16 points in another font. They look and feel different because most people don't understand this about type, but it's actually essentially a whole bunch of itty bitty little pictures next to each other that are designed to line up really perfectly. And so typefaces are just, they vary, right? So like they have a certain amount of space, they can put that letter in, and some of them take up more of that space and some of them take up less. It's just a design thing. That being said, there's a really fun extension called Font Swap. I also just realized, wait, class goes to 8:30? Or, okay, sorry, subject time is getting me. All right. So Font Swap is a really fun Chrome extension that basically, let me jump out of here. We'll just keep messing with Wayfair just because it's fun. All right. So Font Swap, I have this installed over here. This lets me basically be like, I think I would like to change all of Wayfair's header to just this thing because it's volunteering it for me. So you can actually, these are all fonts you can find on Google Fonts. You can go through and basically just be like, I want to try this one. What does it look like with this? So this is part of why I'm saying like code out your content and then worry about your font choices, because it's really easy once you have the content in on a web page to go ahead and move my sharing bar out of the way, to go ahead and mess with it. And this makes it easy to just like see it on the page. Another way to do it, actually, let me refresh this so I can get their actual styles. You can also, like I said, you're like, I like the way that they're using that font. Let me see what font they're using. So you have your element, you have the element that contains the text. And generally speaking, you have to slide like way down. Oh, this is actually not too far. So they're using a font called Rock and Roll 1. And then they have a sans serif following it. So I don't recognize the name on this. I'm going to guess it's proprietary. A lot of fonts are proprietary. But the way that I would find this is I would just basically be like, let's see, it was Rock and so. Oh, it's not proprietary. Or at least it's not completely proprietary. So when you're looking at fonts on Google Fonts, I would suggest that you, excuse me, that you would, like, if you find a font on Google Fonts, that's great. Just look at how many styles it has available. So if you notice, this just says regular 400. That means if you chose this font, you would have no options for bold or italic choices, basically. You want to minimize how many different fonts you're using on a website anyways, because the more fonts you load, like the heavier it is. But like I would never use this for like my body text, like the text, just like paragraph text and things like that, because generally speaking, at some point somebody's going to want to italicize something or bold something. Like it's kind of inevitable. So you want to always pick a font that has at least bold and italic options for something that's like your basic body font. if you want to pick a different font specifically for your headers, it's a little tricky to get the like balance right to do that. So it's up to you if you want to bother, but you can get away with having something for headers that has like a lot fewer characters, because generally speaking, headers, like you just have one version, right? Like you very rarely are like italicizing or bolding headers. All right. So same concept with, so same concept as colors when it comes to fonts. You can just pull stuff. And I think that this is still left over from Font Swap, because I'm pretty sure that's not actually the, anyway. This doesn't look right to me. But it's just a way of like, essentially like, I like that font. Just look it up and see if you can find it. You can purchase fonts and stuff like that, but especially for what you guys are doing for capstone and things like that, just use fonts that are on Google Fonts. There's so many. There really are like so many fonts on Google Fonts. So just an example, all of these fonts are 40 pixels. So you can see how they're all 40 pixels and they're all the same weight. So most likely the same weight. I have to double check, but like they have a very different, and by weight, I mean like bold or normal, that kind of stuff, which actually, so that brings me to, this is the second to last slide and then we're almost done. So spacing and legibility, there's a fun idea basically that when it comes to the quote unquote perfect paragraph for legibility, that is a combination of the size of your font, how tall the lines are, and how wide your reading space is. So that, which is your line length. So what I'm actually going to assign you guys for homework is, if I can find it, is this goofy little game that lets you try to create the equilateral triangle of a perfect paragraph. It's using all the same font, but basically they're showing you different sizes and weights and line lengths, and basically saying like balance this using like the one slider option. As I put in the assignment, it's this is not a quiz. It's just a way of like kind of seeing how the different attributes of the paragraph like affect legibility. And so homework is play with this game and pick 3 websites that you like the design of. They don't have to be things that you want to like inspire your capstone, but we're going to be like, so pick 3 websites and basically give me like 3 to 5 bullet points for each website. It's just like, why do you like this website? Like, why do you like the design on this website? And try to be specific. So be like, I like the way that they use, like they space out, like they have a lot of space around their headers, so they're really easy to find. Or like, I really like the way that they use like their primary colors are like really bold. They contrast really well with the background, stuff like that. Try to be specific as much as you can manage to not just be like, it's really pretty. It's tempting to do that, but try to analyze, like try to understand like why do you find it pretty, right? Like, why is that happening? Because the more you can kind of think, like dig through the details, the more you'll be aware of this kind of stuff. And you can't implement it if you're not aware of it. And so the rest of class is basically if you guys have questions, or I'm going to give you like a 15-minute assignment we can all do together. And I want you to just post a screenshot. So snag a website, doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be one of your favorite ones. It can be Wayfair if you want. Go in and mess with the colors and the fonts and like the spacing. It doesn't have to be pretty, just play with it. Like, so mess with it using the inspect element, like overwrite stuff, and then take a screenshot of what you create. This is 100% fun. This is not like, consider this like collage level design. We're not like trying to be really intense about it. It's just like a play with all the stuff we kind of just talked about. Take like a first screenshot of what it looked like originally, and then take another one and post them both in Slack just for fun.
So we're not actually changing the site, obviously. We're just using inspect or whatever, and then showing what that did to it in the test development mode, and then the screenshot to show you that. And does that include just colors, typeface, whatever, right?
Yep. Yeah. So change your colors and your type. Start with changing the colors and the type, just to see how it affects stuff.
And we're doing 3 of those for homework, but right now you'd like us to do 1 in class?
No, so for homework, you're just gonna look at a website and like talk about why you like it and like what you find interesting about the design. And this is written down in the assignment in Google Classroom. So you're doing this type game, and so it's the type game and then the three websites that just give me like 3 or 4 bullet points about like what you find interesting about their design.
Okay.
This right now is literally just a playing activity of like.
And I can.
If you want to take a really nice looking website and see how terrible you can make it look, I fully support that as a exercise.
Okay.
This is just practice playing with like overriding styles and inspect. And like you said, you're not actually overriding anything permanently. So make sure you screenshot before you hit refresh.
Right. So we're doing that now and then showing you the screenshots.
Yeah.
All right. I just got to decide, and I get to pick the site.
Yep. It can be whatever you feel like.
And obviously it's not the whole site. It's probably the front page, right, that we're dealing with.
Yep. You can pick whatever you feel like. So if you want to pick a product page on Amazon and make it say ridiculous things and make it look goofy, go for it. This is why you should never trust screenshots from the internet, by the way. And
All right, here we go.
I saw a request for the shortcut for the inspect. It is Command Option I. If you memorize it, you'll use it all the time. Oh, and I'll stop sharing here. You also can just share your screen if you want to show everybody what you created.
Hey, Christy.
Mhm.
Can you, Brandy, I think needs a demo of like how to get to the color picker inside DevTools.
Oh, sure. Sorry.
That's
I don't know
okay.
why I missed that one piece. All right. All right, let me share again here. Yeah, so this is important. So it's well, let's pick the website has a little more going on. All right, so without DevTools open, you can right click, inspect element, and that'll pop you open to an element, which I just clicked on an image. So I'm going to switch to something a little more useful. I'm going to use this little caret here. We'll do a piece of text because I know that has color attached to it. Let me scroll down to color. Color has to be set in here somewhere. All right. So when you see the little color chip, you just hold shift and click on the color chip, and that'll change your format. But if you just want to get the color picker, you just click on the color chip. I saw the question about, so do icons on the site always change when using font extension? They don't necessarily, but if the website is using what's called an icon font and you click select all, then it probably would overwrite them. So there's a bunch of different ways to load icons into a website, and one popular way is using what's called an icon font. So Font Awesome is a super popular one, and it loads a whole set of glyphs. So just like I was talking about how letters are actually just like a bunch of little pictures. It loads like these icon pictures basically, just like a font, and then it uses particular characters to access them. So like for an icon, you would set the icon to be like the font to be Font Awesome, and then you use a particular character and it knows which glyph to like, which icon picture to like pull out. It can be a really like efficient way to load a whole bunch of icons if you're using a lot of icons. There's other ways to do it with like SVGs and things like that. But it just depends on what you're doing. If you just want them like in your layout, especially so things like search, like little search icons, or like the like menu bar, the like 3 bars for a menu, common things like that. Font Awesome is super useful for stuff like that because it's easy to pull in, and all the same rules, like CSS rules that you can use to style font, you can also use to style the Font Awesome icons, which is fun.
And if we hit a link and then move the page, it just throws all the changes away, right?
Yeah, bummer, sorry.
No, that's.
This is useful also for, believe it or not, I've done this a lot professionally, because sometimes people want like little adjustments to things that they can see on web pages. So if you're working on a web page that already exists and you're like, and your boss is like, hey, can we like move this thing over here? And you're just like, oh yeah, sure. Well, let's just see if we can do it. You can just like pop open inspect and like restyle stuff and move it over. And take a screenshot and be like this, and they're like, yeah, is it done? And I'm like, no, this is just a sample. But yes, it's doable. But it's often faster than trying to like recreate the whole thing in like a graphics program. And I'm still sharing, I just realized. These are fun, guys.
And a screenshot goes into Slack, or
Yeah.
where?
Just put it in the student channel,
Hmm.
so that everybody else can see it too. I can't keep all the fun to myself. Ariel, those screenshots of the like color blindness effects are really cool. What do you guys think? The New York Times could go for a dark blue background. Totally accessible. That was a joke, by the way. Pretty sure that's not going to pass contrast picker. It's fun though to change it. Oh yeah, I see that the icons got overwritten and oh, interesting. Susan, you were saying that you tried to change the New York Times font. If you change it and use, I would not necessarily suggest you use this except as last resort in your actual CSS code, but if you change the font and then put an exclamation point important after it, it'll automatically overwrite anything. That's the like, it's like I said, you never use that unless you like really have no other choice, because it's in order to overwrite that, if you needed to, you have to use another exclamation point important, and at some point if they like multiply like rabbits, you just like all of a sudden their exclamation points all over the place, and it makes your code a pain in the butt to try and deal with. But for exercises like this, it's useful.
So the button still is green that I changed on Wayfair.
Mm-hmm.
Is that because I didn't log off completely out of Google?
So it might be green because it's, well, it looks
That's
like
the new
your
alert,
button text is green.
Yeah, I changed the links and then a button in the picture to green to match.
Oh, I see. Oh, but when you refresh Wayfair, it didn't go away.
Yeah, the button's still green.
Do Command Shift R instead of just Command R to refresh, and that should break the cache on your. What happened is style sheets generally get cached, and so that's actually probably the same thing that happened when I updated my fonts over on Wayfair. They're probably caching their styles. Oh, that didn't do it either. The other thing you can do is if you, here, I'm gonna share my screen and I'll play with this until I can get mine to clear too, because it's not cleared either. We'll do another random entree into DevTools. If you go over to application, Wayfair they're really big with cookies. They do a lot of like tracking stuff with cookies. So if you go to application and then you look at your cookies panel over here on the left-hand side, if you click on Wayfair and then just click this little thing that says clear all cookies when you hover over it, it'll probably help. Nope, it's the fonts that won't go away. Oh, there we go. Okay, so if you use font swap on the page, you also have to click reset font swap, so it'll stop, or reset page, so it'll stop doing it. But did that fix your colors, Corey?
It's the picture is still a green button. It was purple on Wayfair.
And Command Shift R didn't work?
No.
Did clearing your cookies work?
Okay.
Don't clear all, don't like clear all your cookies, just clear. So if you open DevTools and if you see where it says application,
Mm-hmm.
you click on Wayfair
Mm-hmm.
and then this little clear all cookies.
Okay.
This is useful, by the way, in general, if you ever want to clear cookies specifically for one website and not like having to clear all the cookies on your entire browser, this is how you do it. Okay.
Awesome. Yeah.
Christy,
Yep.
how do I switch out a color?
So if you want to change a color, you can. Let me.
It's in the nav bar. It's a Wegman site. It's in the nav bar and they have links going across, you know, store, da, 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 da. So all that is inside a style sheet. So all I have to do is go to the style sheet to the one place where they said color.
Yep. So you just inspect element on, so say we want to change stores. We inspect element and they have this particular one, they have a nav rule here with links. And they have a color setting. So in here, you can actually, if you know what hex value you want to change it to, you can change it to a hex value. You can also just say like teal.
Just pick a color. Okay. I didn't know if I could right click in like a menu of, I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't, the browser doesn't autocomplete colors. Like if you were in VS Code and you were doing this, and I started to type teal, it would like drop me down a whole bunch of color options.
Yep.
The browser's not that nice.
Okay. This is just for fun anyway. So, all right. I got to pick, I'm picking something other than teal. I hope you don't mind.
Yeah, that's totally fine. That was random. That was the first color.
I know. But we're not supposed to use red, and look at that nav bar. So 3 weeks ago, I didn't know that was a nav bar, so I've learned something.
There you go. Yeah, you can. So red is funny because you can use red. You just have to be careful how you use red. I mean, if you look at the Target website, just for example,
well, it is red.
Speaking of
or
using
the red cross.
I mean, they have red everywhere, but it's also like so clearly their brand that they're doing.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, it's just everywhere.
It's the duct tape that ties it all together.
Dana's now going to make sure that all of your capstones use red as a primary color.
Wayfair would be the specially imported goat wool twine that ties it together. For Target, it's just the duct tape.
Yeah.
Hergé.
Yeah. You know, and it's actually funny because for e-commerce, Target actually has pretty good, like they actually have really like pretty solid design practices in general. I mean, they're big enough. Any like really big name brand, generally speaking, like Walmart is not generally well known for their like, as a brand, they're not well known for being high end, but they actually have really good design practices. Like they just revamped their website probably 6 or 8 months ago.
Yeah.
And it's actually like pretty solid.
Yeah. All right, well, come on, cooperate.
So I just noticed it's 8:30. So anybody that doesn't have questions or isn't still playing is welcome to jet and either go do homework or get some rest or, you know. Yeah.
Quick question. Now that I've changed them to purple, because I just want to say that I can, how do I just refresh the browser page? Never mind.
Yeah, Corey, did you ever get yours unstuck or is he still here? He's not still here. I'll have to find out later if he ever got unstuck.
No, it didn't change.
His green on Wayfair.
Wait a minute. Body. Yeah. I'm in the body class script type. Where'd it go? It didn't change, so I obviously changed it in the wrong place.
If you're having trouble overwriting it, you can always use that exclamation point important.
Because it should change all the links that are in the center in the nav bar. if I understand style sheets correctly. So.
Well, when you changed it, did the rule get crossed out? Because sometimes if you put in a keyword that's not a real keyword, then it won't apply it. That's another option.
Okay. Now I'm a little confused because, you know, they have this broken up into sections in the style sheet. They have body.
Do you want to share your screen?
Oh, sure. All right. I can
here,
do
I'll
that.
stop
I just
sharing.
got to go back into Zoom, Zoom, Zoom on Zoom. All right. Share screen. I'm getting really good at share screen. I hope I can graduate knowing how to do that. All right. So I want to change this here. I'm going to close it. It's a purple just because I can. So where'd I go?
So
It's here. Page template.
Oh, so go ahead and
that's not it.
Yeah, so actually, if you use that little, so if you look up right next to where it says elements in the DevTools, there's a mouse. It looks like a mouse hovering over a square, two elements to the left, or two like pictures to the left. Click
The
on
pointer
that.
or this?
The pointer? No, the pointer. We're gonna actually talk about that tomorrow.
Okay.
Now click on like stores, or like click on the pointer and then, oh, hold on, it didn't keep it. You're gonna have to click on it one more time.
I have to do it in simultaneously?
No, just click on it and then there you go. So now you're specifically selecting, like, see how in the elements panel it's got that particular one selected?
Yep. Yeah. And
now
that's
change that.
Yep. Got it.
Now change it.
So
that's a super useful shortcut if you're like trying to figure out.
yeah, I didn't know what that was. So all these things, you know, like I said in my comments about when websites now they put, if there's a link and next to it they have the little icon that you can tell it can open another, you know, tab.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have that back in the day. You had to right click, open it, and that really saves a lot of keystrokes.
Yeah, these tools are incredibly useful.
Yeah.
I've been looking for, or I've been appreciating them a lot more recently. I've been doing a bunch of mobile development stuff and doing user interface development on mobile without any of these tools is just unfun.
Oh yeah, it's a whole other. Check it out. It changed.
Yay! Take a screenshot.
So, I want to change more than that.
You can change more than that, but you know.
So I don't need to like save or refresh or anything because it will just go back to what it's supposed to be. It thinks I'm a hacker.
Yep.
All right. So
yeah,
now.
and you can even like swap out graphics doing stuff like this. I should have mentioned this earlier. You can swap out graphics from doing things like this. All kinds of goofy stuff. It's just it's a really good way to learn how to use DevTools and also have a chance to play with design stuff. Sometimes when I'm looking at templates for things, I'll actually like pre-made templates, like whether it's like a WordPress template or like other like CMS template or stuff like web layouts or whatever, I'll actually like snag my content and like drop it in just to see what it looks like.
Yeah, that's really cool. They've come a long way. I mean, HTML is a lot more robust and stuff. I mean, what little I did with it years ago. I wanted to change Wegmans, but it's an image.
Oh, yep, because it's a logo.
Right, and I wanted to change the color of it, but
yeah, you won't actually be able to change the color of it without swapping out the image.
But I could replace it with another image.
Yep, you could if you wanted to.
The wild and crazy. Source equals I don't know what.
You're probably, I would take the easier route and change some stuff that's like text.
All right.
Or buttons or other kind of.
He went back to red.
Hey, Christy.
Did you refresh it?
Not knowingly.
All right.
All right.
Carolyn, you want to hop off screen sharing?
I can do that.
Somebody said my name.
Yeah, I know. I can do that. I know how to do that. Hey. Thank you.
I know class is over, but I tried to switch my background image. I went and found something, and then I tried to put it in, and I accidentally deleted it from the inspector. I was just wondering if you can just show us real quick how you would swap out an image.
Oh, sure. So you accidentally deleted the element?
I did
for
right
the-
from the HTML on the
Yep.
Netflix site. I was trying to replace it with a picture of popcorn.
Yeah, so you can actually like edit the HTML in here, which is kind of cool. So, all right, I'm gonna jump over to Unsplash and grab a new image. Apparently, the last time I was on Unsplash, I was looking for animals. We'll go with the duck. So it's easiest to swap out images that are already hosted someplace on the internet, like on Splash. That's just because you can just swap out the URLs. So let's see. So this is a graphic.
Yeah,
This
that's
is
what I was
interesting.
trying to do. Otherwise, we would have to do a rel, right? We would have to put it into our space and.
Yeah, and you don't really have a good way to do that when you're just playing with it like on the front end like this, because you don't have access to like the hosting files, right? So all right, so let's inspect this picture. So one of the other interesting things you'll learn is that when you're looking at pictures and stuff like that, like you can find out when they're using text inside of pictures, because this could have easily been a picture with text, like live text next to it, but instead the whole thing's a picture. So what I would do is actually, I would click on this until just this is highlighted. So if you try to click on, like you can actually delete element, you can duplicate element, you can edit as HTML. So I could actually edit the whole HTML, it'll like pop it out this way, but then I might accidentally just delete the whole thing. I mean, it's not a huge deal in this context, but you can also, if you just double click, it'll get you into the attribute. This is true for any attribute on an HTML element on a page in general. So like if you double click so that like everything inside the double quotes is highlighted, then you can easily replace it. So this should work. Except, oh, hold on. So these guys, they're actually using a picture element in HTML. So picture is HTML5. I can't remember which version we're on now. It's basically an HTML element that makes it easy to swap out pictures. So for different size devices. So if you want a different crop for like mobile versus like tablet versus desktop, you basically create a picture element, and then you can have multiple, you always have an image tag inside of it as a fallback, but you see how it has min width 900 pixels and then min width 0 pixels. This is saying like, if I have greater than 0 pixels, show me this picture. If I have greater than 900 pixels, show me this other picture. So they're basically creating like a picture breakpoint. We're actually gonna talk about breakpoints tomorrow, but it lets you like dynamically load other images, but it's a lot more efficient. You can actually do that using CSS, where you could like load several images. Well, I clearly changed something that affected something because it actually did stuff, except that now it's deciding not to load. All right, hold on. Let me do this with one that's a little less fancy. But picture elements are super cool, because it used to be that like in order to change out images based off of like screen size, you would basically load 3 images, and then you'd like hide the 2 that you don't want to see depending on your device size. But that's like super heavy, right? Because images are some of the biggest part of like your file size for a page. So the picture element basically it only loads the one that meets the parameters for the screen size, which is way lighter and a lot more efficient.
And that's not the same as adding a picture where you just focus on one part of that one picture, but you can focus on different parts of the picture, right? That's different. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, this this is like basically, think about it like an easy way to swap out a picture. So like, you're telling the browser, like, depending on screen sizes or depending on this, like a particular parameter, I want to have a certain picture loaded. So like you could do this for like high density screens. Like one of the like media options is like times 2x for like retina screens or something like that. All right, where did my picture go? Now this is just silly. We'll try checking this, changing this one too, just to see if it's. All right, at this point, I'm gonna just be lazy. See what I can see if I can totally. I'm just gonna get rid of the picture element and see what happens. This doesn't have to be this hard. I don't know why I'm fixing the spacing here. It doesn't actually matter. All right, all done. Part of the reason I was just realizing, I think I was modifying an ad, which also is probably not helpful. Sorry, lady, I'm going to turn you into a duck. Hopefully. So the reason I'm only changing out the like first part of this URL is if you notice there's parameters on this. It says width 315, height 315. It's like got quality, format, that kind of stuff. I'm going to do that, but I don't want WebP or the quality. I don't care about that either. Ha! Okay, so this generally works, but apparently maybe not on target. So typically it's as simple as that. Thanks for the resource on the picture element, Dana. Yeah, I'm not sure why.
No problem. That was a great tip. I didn't even realize that that was there. That's a lot better than doing what we were doing before, which is to show and hide, and you have to create all that additional code in your HTML. So I thought that was great.
It's I spent a lot of time playing with that stuff because a lot of larger e-commerce sites, like I'm sure Target has this issue too. Actually, I should just try something that's like that's less e-commerce. So a lot of e-commerce websites, because they load so many pictures, are like really intense about picture optimization. Because it's one thing to load a couple of different versions of like your hero image. It's another thing to load several different versions of every product image you load on the page. So like it goes from being like 2 extra images to being like 200 extra images potentially. And so that like can seriously slow down your site speed for stuff like that. All right. Maybe I should make sure that the URL I'm using is actually good. Aha, important tip. Make sure you actually pull the correct URL. This is the URL to the picture, not the, all right, let's try this again. It's the little things. It's just bothering me that this isn't working correctly. Okay, so this actually should be correct because this is the actual graphic. I'm inside of a picture element again. This is just happening to me over and over again. There we go. It's a duck. Finally, 12th time's a charm. But yeah. But looking at picture elements, opening the sources for the different like media and stuff like that can also give you an idea about how sites change their graphics based off of like device size. We're not really going to go into like the like actual picture creation part of of visual design and layout, because it really is almost like a separate discipline. So
Cool. That was great. Thank you. This was a good class.
good. Sorry for the copious amount of talking, but
We're used to it.
That's
That's a
suppose
little
that's fair.
tea for Max.
Well, it's kind of hard to teach without communicating, and you have to talk. So you're
Exactly.
great.
well,
You're great. I'm doing some more horrible things to Danny Wegman's site. Not for real, of course. I'm going to do a couple more horrible, nasty things and then send it on its way. I'm making it ugly.
that
You said we
works.
could do that.
Yep.
So I thought, why not?
Yeah, for sure. And I probably should head out too, unless anybody, do other people have questions? Because I can stay if other people have questions, but if nobody's got questions.
I'll put it in Slack and we'll have some fun.
Sounds good. Yeah,
There's,
and I'm
there's
on Slack all
code
the
in there
time
I
'cause
don't
use it for work,
understand
so-
too. So I'm working, there's much more
Oh, yeah.
advanced stuff that I've got to
Yeah,
go,
definitely,
okay, well, I
definitely feel free to find stuff that you're like, what is this? And ask about it and stand
Yep.
up tomorrow or whenever. So
work your way backwards. That's a good way to learn. All right, Christy, so we'll see you tomorrow night. Thank you
yeah.
very much.
Bye guys.
Night
Have a really
now.
good night.
You too. Oh, is this chat being saved? Because I missed the last few messages. There's like 26 in here.
I don't know. Wait, Caitlin, did you get a chance to save the chat?
I can download it. I think Dana, does it automatically download, I thought, or something? Oh, you're muted. I can't hear you.
It's mostly just, thanking everyone. So that's good. All right.
If
Gotcha.
there's, so since you're specifically requesting these, like right now, we're not just mass sending the chat out, but because you're
Mhm.
specifically asking for someone, I'll go ahead and send this out. I'll circle back with Max and Jesse about that, because I have every single chat saved, like full chats. So we just need to circle back on that. And if there are any other full chats that you want access to, just let me know.
Oh, you're very kind. No, I just want to make sure that I had a chance to read through the last few messages that got posted. Most of them are things like great class tonight. Thank you so much. I'm going through real quickly, but I didn't want it to go away before I saw them, but please don't. I'm good.
Yeah, I think
I got enough to read.
the last resource that was posted was the one about the picture element. Did you see that? I'll go ahead and put that in resources and
HTML
Google
picture
Classroom
element.
for you.
Display the different pictures or different devices on screens. Oh, awesome.
Yeah, that's super useful.
Okay.
And because
Oh,
it contains an
yeah.
image element, it's like there's a super simple fallback. Like it's very
Like,
old browser proof, pretty much.
and
So
these HTML5 things, I mean, they really, back in the day was, oh, you can't do that. You have to follow this format and you have to do that. And it's like,
Yeah.
they just make it so much easier.
Yeah, if I don't hurry
everything's
up and type
evolving.
this stuff, somewhere, I'll forget it. So I'm like, okay, there's the chat right there. Let me hurry up and
I'm good. I'm good.
get it all.
Good
All
night,
right, then.
everyone.
Good
We'll see you
night.
tomorrow. Same bat time,
Yeah.
same bat
Tomorrow.
channel.
Good. Thanks a
Thanks,
lot.
Christy.
Yeah, thanks so much.
All
You
right,
too,
bye-bye now.
Caitlin.